this is what people do. Well, I'm responding to this because I want to tell you this other way to see it because I want to help you. But really it's because I want to prove my authority or prove how much I know. Right. And so like when you look at the frequency of that, like that's not where I want to be.
Traveling to consciousness, exploring spiritual journeys to find answers in uncertainty.
What is up, conscious monkeys? Welcome back to another episode of Traveling to Consciousness. As always, I'm your host, Clayton, and honestly, I had a pretty solid shift last night. I'll talk to you guys about that intention. Luckily, our guest today is an intuitive channel, so she'll help us out with it to make sure that I'm on the money with this. But enough about me. Let's talk about her. She's a fan favorite. She's back on the show for another episode because, well, amongst many reasons, she released a new book called Pain, Love, and Purpose. It's a book of poetry, and we're honestly going to riff on her books for a little bit at the beginning here. So yeah, sit tight because I've got a lot to say. But conscious monkeys, without further delay, welcome to the show, Christina the Channel Rice. Christina, thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure.
Thanks for having me. I always love how you've named me Christina the Channel Rice.
Is that not on your like account or something? I feel like I saw it somewhere.
It's definitely not, but I should put it there for sure.
I mean, I think it's official now. If you're on two podcasts and it comes up, it's a thing.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, well, I'm excited to be back. We always have good chats, so can't wait to see where we end up today.
Well, and that's a beautiful place to start because we have had, to fill the audience in, we've had two conversations now, but have talked for a grand total of like 7 hours, which I find that's not normal for me. I don't know what your life is like, but for me, that's like crazy that we've had two conversations at this point, 7 hours. We met up in San Diego. And I didn't even realize that 3.5 hours went by. And you were like, oh, I think I need to go do something else. And I was like, holy shit, you're right.
Yeah, I know. It's just kind of a time warp. I mean, I tend to get in those anyway, but I feel like since your show lends itself to 3-hour podcasts, you're done with that anyway.
I love it. I mean, it's not common for me, I guess. So, but I mean, if that's your thing, that's your thing. So you're the perfect guest for the show.
Yeah.
And what's also awesome, and guys, should also show you the gravity maybe of having Christina on the podcast, is that she even told me that she doesn't say yes to everyone. So we should also feel super special and lucky to have her here again.
I don't. And I don't want that to like make anyone feel any type of way. I think in general, you shouldn't say yes to everybody and everybody, you got to know your no's and your yeses. And it's more about resonance than anything else, And I was telling you, like, I know how I work as a channel and just like with my human design, and the quality of conversation is always dependent on the questions I'm asked. And this is true in podcasting and just in my regular life. And so in every conversation I have, I want to be really excited and I want to be really engaged. I don't want to be bored in the conversation. And so I know that I'm going to love the conversation if the person I'm in the conversation with asks really good questions. If anybody listening is into human design, that is classic, like quad right in human design. It's all about the people around you, like curating a network where people are asking you really good questions. And that's how they can pull out all of the really interesting information that you have somewhere within you. So that's a little like quad right note.
Well, human design is something we talked a little bit about, and I've actually dove in.
Got into it, whatever. I don't know. I think it's dove. I dove into it.
Driven.
It's definitely not divin. It's dove.
No, it's not divin.
It's definitely not divin.
I'm making that word up.
Yeah.
So I dove into it a bit deeper, and yeah, that feels right.
Yeah.
I dove into it a lot deeper, and it's crazy. It's crazy how, like, first of all, how complex it is, how many different areas of your life that it actually like explains and lays out, and then how much of it like you can actually utilize for, I don't know, life, whatever you're doing, whatever you're creating in general.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I use it for everything. Like, it's how I run my business. It's how I eat, like nutrition. It's really helpful in relationships. It's how I like schedule my day. It's all about how you're energy flows most optimally, you know, and it's about being in alignment. It's your unique energetic blueprint. So, I mean, manifestation is in there, like everything you really need is in there. I think it's the most helpful roadmap. Like when people are like, where do I start? I want to get into alignment, or I want to better understand myself. I just feel like human design is the most helpful place to start because it is so actionable. Like it tells you where to look for your intuition to be coming through. It gives you guidance as to like what your best like rhythms are throughout the day, like how you're best structured, like manifestation tips where your unique gifts are, where you're picking up energy from other people, and then where you're consistent in your own energy, where other people are going to be more influenced by you. And I've just found that it's been an invaluable tool for me in my life. Every single thing I do, like I was just telling someone this the other day, I was like, if I had to like take a step back, zoom out and say there was like a foundation for everything I teach, or anytime I've worked with a client, I'm always starting with human design and masculine and feminine energy. Like when you understand those two things practically, it really helps you understand how energy flows within your own life. And that is the basis, because everything is energy, like to me, for creating the life you want and just feeling good, you know? So I feel like those are always the two things that I go back to. Like those are foundational.
Well, so then, you know, with this idea of alignment, with this idea of human design, and using human design for whatever you're doing, whether it's jumping on a podcast, whether it's creating something for your community, whether it's creating a community, is there kind of like almost like a grid or something that you would use in regards to human design based on the specific thing that you're doing? Because kind of like you roughly went through, it's like, it talks about digestion. It talks about how you respond to things. It talks about the scenery that you should be around. Mm-hmm. So how do you almost, because a lot of it feels really overwhelming. Like the lady who I worked with, she like took an hour-long video to go through my whole human design, and it still felt like she was just scratching the surface. But then whenever it comes to actually implementing or making decisions, it's this feeling of like, which piece of this puzzle do I use at a given moment?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely can be overwhelming, and it's the classic thing with anything in life. Like the more you know, the more you know you don't know, you know, like with anything, like the deeper I get into anything, I'm like, wow, I'm always just scratching the surface. And so it is just like that. I mean, how can you expect like a system that complex, any system to map you unique, like multifaceted person out in an hour, right? Like it's just not going to happen. So I have studied this a lot. I am obsessed with human design. And I'm still always scratching the surface. There's so much I still don't know. And that's what I love about it. So it just depends on like what area of my life I'm looking at, you know, and then I kind of know the main places to start. Like, I don't know if you have an example. I mean, it's like, if it's related to health, I'm looking at like high level digestive type, the arrows around your head. I'm looking at the top left arrow about like, can your body handle fasting, or is it not really meant to? Are you meant to be eating in a more structured way, in a more consistent way? Or is it better if it's just kind of like all over the place, like whenever just following your natural hunger rhythms? I'm looking at digestive type, that arrow. And then I also like to look at, there are certain channels that indicate different macronutrients, like which macronutrients are going to be really helpful for you to focus on. And there's also a channel that's about red meat and whether or not your body can really utilize the energy from red meat. So, you know, what I love about human design is, because, you know, I have a background in nutrition and I've tried every diet under the sun. I've worked with I specialize in chronic illness and worked with mystery cases, right? So I like really am into the nitty gritty of all these different diets. And it always just really was hard for me to wrap my brain around. Like, I see how they all work, and they all work for different people. How come some people go vegan and their hair falls out and they're super nutrient deficient? Other people go raw vegan and they're thriving and they're 80 and they look like they're 45 and they have amazing skin. Like, why? Right? Or with carnivore, how come some people go carnivore and they feel incredible and they're thriving, and other people go carnivore and their hormones are out of whack and they're putting on all this weight and they're breaking out? Like, everybody's so different. And I have found that human design is actually the thing that can help explain that, you know, which makes sense to me. I'm like, wow, finally there's something that kind of can indicate to you which of these your body might do better with. And, you know, we're always shifting and changing, but that was a game changer for me. And like my digestive type, I would have never tried without seeing that in human design. Like I wouldn't have ever like thought of doing it. I'm cold thirst, so it's like drinking a lot of liquids and everything needs to be cold. And so the way I actually kind of reset my body was I just went on a liquid diet. And my whole body just like healed, you know, and I would never have done that had I not had that inspiration from my digestive type. Or there's one digestive type that's called nervous touch. And we're taught, you know, to always be in a calm state when we're eating, you know, rest and digest, don't have much going on, like don't watch TV, like just make sure that you're really, you know, calm. Well, there are some people who that's great for, but there are other people who are nervous touch who are meant to eat on the go, who shouldn't be sitting down, who should have kind of chaos around them. Like that's what nervous touch is. It's like, don't sit down and try and get in rest and digest. Your body's going to be able to digest and utilize the energy from your food when you're like, you know, you're walking around while you're eating. Like it's the total opposite of what we learn nutritionally. And it just goes to show everybody's different. You know, there are some people who, you know, there's one digestive type that's about light. So there's direct and indirect. So direct means daytime eater, like eating when the sun is out. But then indirect is eating when it's nighttime, you know, and I have friends who are all of these indirect. And one of my friends, she's a nutritionist and she was fighting that, like, you know, forever because she was like, I'm not going to eat like my food at night, you know, and she always was somebody who tended to want to eat all of her calories at nighttime. And then when she found out her human design, she just leaned into it. And now she does mostly just like, you know, she drinks water. She'll sometimes do broth. She'll do coffee, whatever during the day, but she eats all of her calories once the sun goes down. And her body has totally balanced out, you know, so I see this happen all the time. We're all really unique. And so that's why I just think human design is really incredible. And even if you look at like digestion, that goes into digesting information or even, you know, with environment. So like me being cold thirst, my body runs really hot. So cold and liquid regulates my body temperature. It's all about body temperature regulation. So it made sense to me because I thought that's why I have a negative reaction to saunas. Infrared saunas like give me a negative reaction when I'm in hot weather. I have a negative reaction, and I started to realize like, okay, cold thirst. Like I lean into things like cryotherapy, like cold showers, like anything cold is going to really be helpful for me. And all of the heating stuff from my unique body doesn't do very well. It makes me swell up. It like actually does the opposite response. So I just find that there are all these nuances that are really helpful that I feel like you don't really come across elsewhere.
It totally makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting too, because I think I discovered that I was also cold digestion and like this idea of like a liquid diet came up. And so I think I need to dive into that a little bit more and see what's going on there. And what also gets interesting is, you know, we're so bombarded nowadays on Instagram, on all these social media platforms with all this different information that people are trying to feed us. I mean, it's interesting too, because there are so many people that are, let's say, in positions of authority, and the only reason we give them authority is maybe based on their follower count, the number of views on this video. And the information feels like sometimes it's completely different, like that what they're feeding us. Like one person could be saying, try A, the other one says try B, and both of them, and it seems like so resonant for that person to do. And this is something that whenever I started diving into my human design, was that there was these things that, because I love trying different things. I love sampling, putting on different hats, trying out different stuff, taking the chameleon approach. But it was more of this thing that nothing was really resonating with me. It was that there seemed to be some truth in some people and what they were saying, and then some things in other people. And it seems to be because they found the answer within their natural human design before even looking at it. And they just decided to propagate that. And it's interesting too, because it's something that resonates with them. It's something that has likely helped them get to where they're at. And so therefore we view them as an authority figure. And whenever someone is, let's say, vibrating at a spot where they are attracting a mass amount of people, we say to ourselves like, hey, there must be some truth here. But in reality, it could be that you're getting magnetized by almost this different tribe or this different person who it might not be in alignment with what your highest frequency might accept or align with.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I think people are so busy trying to figure out the truth, and they're thinking of that as like there's one truth. And the thing is that all of these different things can work, right? So if I want to look at something like blood sugar regulation, okay, I could use a high fat, high protein, low carb diet to regulate my blood sugar, right? And you could go to a certain clinic or work with a certain doctor who uses that in their entire practice, and they get great results again and again and again. Right? So they found one approach that works, and they keep doing that again and again and again. But I could also go elsewhere where they've used very high carb, high sugar, low fat, low protein, like below 20%, below 15% diets to also get the same results. And they have had that replicated again and again and again. And I think people are so busy. They see things like that and they're like, which one is right? Why can't they both be right? They both are right. Like different things work. Many approaches work, and sometimes one approach will work for my body now and won't work for it later. Sometimes both could work for me right now, and it's just a matter of what feels good for me. What do I want? And so I think that that's like a big spiritual trap I find that people fall into. Like that's a lot of the like 4D energy I find of, it's like, I got to get to the truth. And the thing is that many things are the truth. Like there's this, I forget which animal it is, but there's this animal card I always love. And it just says like this and that are true. And the whole description is, like 2 things can be true at the same time. 5 things can be true at the same time, even if your logical brain wants to tell you that they can't be. Our brain wants to find the one right answer for safety, but there can be a lot of things that are true at the same time. And I think there's some freedom in that. And I think we have to look back at like, is there any piece of us, and that could be individually or just the collective, that like, why are we always trying to make people wrong? Like because there can be
ego.
Yeah, like there can be a subtle, and that's not always the case of why people are trying to figure that out, right? But that can be an energy underneath it that can be unintentional or subconscious of like, and I will say in the collective, that is a strong energy of like wanting to make people wrong, right? And we have to look at like, but why do I need that person to be wrong? Why can't we both be right? Why does anybody need to be right? Why can't I just do my thing? And I think that's where the bigger growth is. People are just way too concerned with what other people are doing. And it's like, we got to focus on ourselves.
Well, do you think it comes from people looking for validation, and maybe they feel like they've transcended a lower truth almost, like, because, and maybe I'm projecting here a little bit from my whole spiritual awakening process, where you start seeing things in a different lens, and you see people carrying out behaviors that to you, to me, I would think that is, I would want to transcend, I would want to transmute. And I see it and I tell them like, hey, like, you have a proclivity to sacrifice yourself in these situations. And it's me, maybe, there's an element of me that is coming from helping. I'm sure there are situations where it comes from me wanting to display a sense of authority or validity in their current situation. And so whenever they push back against that, it almost could hurt our ego or our self-identity, because this thing that we believe is a higher truth than what they're experiencing might not be for their highest self to actually transcend at this time, or even for ourselves to to give them that answer. Does it kind of make sense where I'm going with that?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but the thing is, it's like, this is what people do. Well, I'm responding to this because I want to tell you this other way to see it, because I want to help you, but really it's because I want to prove my authority or prove how much I know. Right. And so like, when you look at the frequency of that, like, that's not where I want to be. I had a lot of conversations recently through a retreat. It was amazing. And we had a lot of conversations around like what it means to live in your power, right? Or like what it means to have people trust you, right? People trust me. People listen to me. And you know why? Is because I don't tell people how powerful I am. I don't need to tell anybody that, right? It's embodied, right? When I see somebody doing something where I could have a critique if I wanted to act from my ego, why is that my place? I don't need to. Are they asking for my opinion? Right? If somebody's asking for my opinion, I'm happy to have a conversation, but like, I'm not their parent. You know what I mean? Like
For sure.
I'm not their like, and I think that we just have to me, it's just tuning back into like, why am I doing this? Worrying about ourselves. And I work with a lot of people who are, on these paths to being different versions of spiritual teachers, right? Who are guides. I work with a lot of people who are guides, who have big voices, in the collective. And it's really important, the more people you're in front of, like, to really keep the energies around you, like, I want to say clean, and that starts with, when we think about what are we attracting in and what are we creating, like really managing my own energy and paying attention to what are my intentions, what's the energy from which I'm saying every single thing I'm saying, and doing every single thing I'm doing. And the more we just start to focus in on that, we're going to get just different results, because people are going to come to us, and I was having a few conversations with some of my clients, like, they kept saying like, well, I just don't know how to get people to, I feel like people think I'm crazy, or people don't believe me, or people, don't know how powerful I am or how intuitive I am. And my question is, why do you care if they know? Right? Like, why do you care if they know? And if you have to tell someone that, then it's probably not embodied. Right? Like, I really believe in letting your energy speak for itself. Yeah, we do need to speak up, but again, it goes back to like, what is my intention behind what I'm saying, right? And I like to just let my energy speak.
And that seems to be a huge element of it. And because I saw a huge shift in my life whenever it almost like it was almost like this lens of taking that step back of, okay, I've been telling them the answer. And it's like, all right, I'm just going to like hands off the wheel, let them go, let them figure it out. And in one situation I'm thinking of, it wasn't more than like 15 minutes later where they had this like light bulb moment of, oh shit, maybe I do this like in this situation. And to me, it was a huge teacher of exactly what you're saying, where it's almost that energy of like, if you're pushing up, if you're trying to force something to happen, the answer could honestly just be taking a step back and allowing the natural process of whatever needs to happen unfold in front of you.
Mm-hmm. I just think like show, don't tell is really powerful. I think living by example is really powerful. And I find that that's the way that people actually can internalize for themselves. Like, I know for me, just me talking about my own realizations, my own trial and error, things that are working for me, just talking about honestly myself is the best way for people to actually learn. And I'm not sharing that because I care if they learn. It's like the same way I just share with friends, just to share. And if somebody pulls something from what I'm saying that can be applied, whether directly or indirectly, to their own life, like, that's super valuable, And I feel like, especially the last few weeks, that's been reflected to me so much. Like, people keep coming to me like, you totally shifted my perspective on XYZ. And I'll be like, really? Like, what, how so? And they'll always give an example of something I did. Like, I watched you do XYZ. And that happened. It's never, well, you told me this. It's never, when you told me this, like, you know what I mean? It's always, I saw you do that, or when you did this one thing, and then I watched how it played out, and I feel like that has been reflected to me so much in the last 3 weeks. It's been like a big message about, I'm realizing like, wow, like, I really get to just live my life, and people are going to get from it, like, what they're meant to get from it. And isn't that beautiful? And I think for a lot of us, like, what allows a knowing to really get ingrained in us, there's a difference between knowing it cognitively and knowing it like in our bodies, like the energetic shift. And what's the moment where it just clicks? It's not always, I mean, sometimes it is somebody saying something and it just is said in the right way at the right time. It just resonates and it clicks, and it's like, whoa, I've heard that before, but I didn't really hear that before, right? Sometimes that's the thing, but I think more often than not, there's some type of real life experience that happens where it's like, whoa, I just lived that. I get it now.
Yeah, it's really beautifully put. And there's a couple things going through my head. One of them, and might be the next step in that, because I know content creators tend to gravitate towards this, and, us both being content creators, have you thought about how you embody that in the content that you actually put out, as opposed to, let's say a lecture format, because I don't, even in my human design, to bring that back in, that's not my style at all. My style is very much like in trying to help embody other people, A, through example, but also B, in the energy of like figuring out the things for themselves, not trying to sit here and be this person of like a high authority. It's more like, no, I'm going to be opening up questions and pulling back layers, take from it from what you will. So the question being, how do you create content, or have you even thought about how you create content that just create content that highlights things that you've experienced in your life, that then people are able to shift their perspective into a more aligned place for themselves?
Yeah. I mean, I think a few ways, like quite a few ways. And for me, with my business and the way that I like share content, it's always evolving and changing. If I look at like the trajectory since, if I take my podcast, for example, the last like 7 years, and I've consistently, like, it's always changing. I've never had one style that I've just stuck with, that whole time. I would get bored. And I think like for me, the core piece is, if it's not contributing to me, then I'm not going to put it out there. So everything I create is something I just want to create, whether or not anybody listens. And so it's like, it goes back to like, just, I'm always doing things that are bringing me joy. And it's not about whether or not anybody else is getting anything from it. Like if they do, great, but that's not why, and I think that anytime I'm putting things out, I put things out that are, I feel like, oh, this is for other people, but it's not really also for me. That's where I start to get in a wonky energy, and I don't feel good, So I've just decided, like, if it's not also as much of a contribution to me as it is to other people, then I'm not going to put it out there, and that's also how I stay excited and interested. I think, like, very practically, I do often just like share about stuff I'm going through. I've always been a very open book. I've shared like really intimate pieces of my life ever since I kind of got on the internet and started building my platform. And so I really do share, like, I share the things I'm going through. I share what I'm struggling with. I've shared a lot with my health journey. I share a lot of like when I'm working through different wounds, and like I always share my healing process and my transformation process, and like what I'm dealing with, and just what I've learned from it, and what I'm doing to move through it. So I just kind of share it in real time. I do a lot of, it's very personal, So, and I think that's really important just for like the energy I like to, like, it's my community, we are a collective together. I learn a lot from them. We all learn from each other. Like, we're all friends, and so I talk to everybody in my community the same way I talk to my closest friends. Like, I talk to everybody the same way, and so I bring that through in everything that I create. And I think that, for me, with everything I put out, like I do a lot of energy updates because that's what I do for fun. Like, that's just what I do in my life. Like, if you don't see from me for if I'm gone for 2 months, guess what I'm probably doing on my house? I'm pulling oracle cards and like just channeling about what's going on in the world. Like, that's just what I'm doing by myself. So I'm like, I'm just going to like record myself doing this. So I think, like, you know what I mean? Like, I just kind of it's like a come with me kind of energy more than anything. And I honestly think for me with channeling, it's a lot easier because, I try and be really clear. I can't control how people interpret, like, what their response is. I can't control that, but I can be really clear in my intention of, for me, channeling, it's like this exploration of, I'm just in the middle, so it gives an opportunity for us to explore things of like what different guides are saying. I'm not saying that that's necessarily what I think. I'm not saying that's what you need to think, but it's just allowing us to open up the door of a conversation to some other energies that maybe you're not talking to as often. And so for me, I think with channeling, it's kind of a nice opt out for me, to be honest, because they do, I would say it's more of an educational kind of tone, energy. And I'm like, they're using me as a voice box, but it's not me. Right. So, that is probably the place where I'm getting more in that energy, because they're communicating through me. Right. But they talk to us that way because they want us to understand that we're on that same level.
For sure. And this is actually a very interesting pivot because this is perfect. Your very first book, let me back up a little bit here. Did we talk about yet that I was able to like open my channel and that I've been using like channeling? Have we talked about that? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So this was something that like really clicked with me recently, which was the idea of actually singulating a channel on like a specific energy, like whether it's like a god from a mythic past or a person from a different, I don't know, a past religion, a past deity, anything. Because it really struck with me, and I'm going to dive into this for a sec, that these are stories, right? Whether it's, what was the example I kept using? Oh, Cupid. Like the story of Cupid embodies the idea of love, right? And and let me think of how I was articulating this. And so we created, humanity, the collective consciousness, created a story around the idea of Cupid to explain the energy of love so that other people could understand what it meant. Like, how do you even articulate like what love is? How do you articulate the energy of love at all? It's like the best way to articulate that is with a story. Mm-hmm. And so when I realized that, something clicked in me. I don't know what took me so long for it to click, but something clicked that was like, you can invoke the energy of Cupid and actually talk to the energy of Cupid. You know, we have a collective agreement that this energy exists. This is what it is. This is the name of it. And that kind of like really, you know, broke me open. And whereas there's a corollary here is that your first book, Manifestation Mastery, was a whole channeled text from, blanking on the name of the goddess. Can you remind me?
The monarch being.
The monarch being. Okay.
The monarch being. Yeah.
And so I found it so fascinating because that book is it's just packed. Like it's easy to read, but it's difficult to get through just because of how many, call it energetic downloads or blueprints come into you while you're reading it. So I guess maybe the question that I'm going for here, I don't think there was a question, but there's one now that's popping up. How did you kind of come across the monarch being? How do you come across the gods or deities that you want to channel? And like, how do you determine which one you want to work with in a given situation? Because there's not too much information out there about all of these gods, and there's some, but not too much. So I'm curious how you kind of come in contact, or you be contact, or you. All right. Well, recording just picked up. I'm going to pause it. So how do you come into contact with like different gods and deities?
I am not somebody that like goes looking. I've always just let everything unfold naturally, you know, so like this is my mission. Like this is a contract for me. Like I've been working with a lot of these. I've been working with ascended masters since I was 1. You know, like they were in my bedroom talking to me, you know, like, so I have intimate relationships with certain energies, the ones that I'm closest with, my soul blueprint, like it's like they're my energetic parents in certain ways. Like, so bits of them are inside of my frequency specifically. So that's why I have a specific connection. A lot of those energies, I have been, when they have incarnated, their spirit guide. So I have spent a lot less time incarnated here and a lot more time being a guide, and specifically with different ascended masters, like that was my role, being one of their guides. So I have a lot of relationships with some of these energies, you know, so for me, it hasn't been like I'm figuring it out. I just see who comes to me. So every day when I'm channeling, I'll see which beings are coming forward. At this point, I have kind of like a group that I work with most consistently. I have some that I work with much more closely than others. I have, you know, a number of them who have asked me to scribe for them, right? So these are the like different books. So it just, you know, like a lot of the beings I work with most closely, if anybody has done my 5D Ascension Activator, it's 30 channeled lessons. So it's 30 different trance channeled messages from different beings. Those are like the beings I work with probably most closely. And there are some energies that I will connect with intuitively, but I don't have the relationship with them to necessarily channel them. Right. So, you know, the monarch being is a main frequency that I work with, that, you know, we're writing lots of books together, and they are not an energy that is incarnated. They are an energy that is essentially masculine and feminine energy. Like like that essence. But I work really closely with goddess Isis and Melchizedek. I've scribed a book for. I work a lot with Serapis Bey and, Athena, Aphrodite. I work with a lot of those energies. Cupid comes in, but the thing is, like, these energies have incarnated, right? Goddess Freya, Odin, like, these are all different energies that I work with pretty closely. And then there are lots of other beings that I don't channel. I just don't have that. I can talk to them, if they want to come forward, but anybody who I'm here to channel, like, I have that relationship with, I've known them for a while, or they're going to come forward and, like, they're guiding that process. And I'm saying, okay, yeah, I feel good. And we're building a relationship, right? I work really closely with Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, Yeshua, like those energies. So those are, I think, all the ones I just listed. Some of my Pleiadian family I'll channel, right? There's a group called the Sisters of Light. So those are some different ones that I channel probably, like, most often. I put all of my, like, work, like my trance channeling is all in my membership. But yeah, I don't go looking for anything. Everything just unfolds for me, right? So these beings will come forward to me. We build a relationship. They'll ask, if they can use me to communicate through. And if I want to, I let them, so the monarch being, like, it was much easier for me to connect with a lot of these other energies that, I would see them, I would get a name, and then I would look them up and be like, oh, like, there are stories about this person. I didn't know who the hell Melchizedek was, or I didn't even know who goddess Isis was. Like, this was like earlier on. And so I was like, oh, these are like energies. And I would, just kind of learn some things, or I would look up I would, like, first Google somebody, and then I would click on images, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's it. Like, that's who I saw. Right. So it was easier there. And then with the monarch being, there was this frequency that was, like, coming through consistently and communicating with me. And I kept asking for a name, and I couldn't get a name. I just kept getting a big M. They just kept showing me an M. And, in identifying the vibration, I was like, it was the highest frequency I had ever connected with. It was so high vibrational, like, and, I started, I was talking more and building that relationship. And it was interesting because it wasn't how a lot of the other energies had come forward, where, like, I was seeing, like, their hologram comes to me. I see them as a hologram. Like, they look like you. They're just more hologrammy. And it's one.
I'm glad to know that I don't look very hologrammy.
Yeah. And it's one clear voice. And, it's like, I'm just talking to somebody, but the monarch being wasn't like that. Like, they don't have, like, a form, but what it is it's like an energy cone, and there's, like, it sounds like a group. So it sounds like a chorus of, like, feminine voices, like, surrounded by a chorus of more masculine voices, like, all just, like, speaking in tandem. So it's just something I had never, and so I spent a long time just getting to know them, blah, blah, blah. And then eventually I kept asking give me a name, like, and then they said, you can call us the monarch being. And yeah, everything just kind of unfolded from there. And so they are, they're the ones that were doing this set of 3. So Manifestation Mastery, my next book, will be coming out, I hope, in February. I wrote it in March or April. I channeled it in April, but I just have to get it sorted, I have to publish it. And then we'll have one more after that. So there will be 3 in this set. I still got to work on finishing that Manifestation Mastery one. Yeah, it's a process.
It really is. It's like a whole journey in and of itself to try to, parse it apart and come back to it. Because it's interesting, because if I try to force it, there's times where my body's just like, we're not ready for what's up next. And I'm just like, all right, I'll listen to you. And it's also interesting that you mentioned Odin, because that is a name that has been, like, constantly been coming to me and, like, poking me. And we'll get back to your books, because I do want to talk about Pain, Love, and Purpose in a bit. But the one thing that I was thinking about, and I'm curious where your thoughts are on this, is the idea of sacrifice. I know, like, in evil times, medieval times, ancient times, it was a lot more like blood and sacrificing, like, a whole goat. And I've kind of seen things where it's like, you just have to do a little bit, like just placing like a sugar cube in a place or a piece of bread. It can be that small. So when it comes to maybe talking to a new energy or invoking a new one, do some of them want some sort of sacrifices, or is that something where it's just like showing them gratitude they're happy with? Like how do sacrifices kind of play into channeling different energies or different beings?
I have never had a guide ask me to sacrifice anything. That's never been my experience. This is my thing. I know there are a lot of people who have a lot of opinions about working with different gods and goddesses and channeling things and whatever. And I don't care. Like, I go off of my experience, and like, guess what? What I'm doing is working, and I know my truth. And I'm going straight to the source. Like, I'm talking to them. Sometimes people will say things like, and again, I'm not saying anybody's wrong or anything, but I can only trust I only trust my discernment, And so if I have an intimate relationship with Isis, for example, right? And I know her very well. She knows me. She's been like my mom since I was born. She's like been like my main female support, like feminine support. And sometimes people will say things about her, and she's just like, no, like, where are they getting that? I think there's a lot of stuff out there around, you have to do X, Y, Z, or don't do that, or you're going to offend them. And like, where are they getting that from? And you have to also understand that the incarnated forms of many of these energies are very different than if we're speaking to like their soul essence, right? So it's like when a lot of these like gods and goddesses,
can you break that down a little bit?
I mean, when they've incarnated, and if they've had like human experience, like they're going through all the crazy shit that we're going through as well, right? And so you hear all these stories about the gods and goddesses like going on rampages and fucking shit up, and like because they didn't know how to deal with their emotions. They had too much power. They're coming onto the earth plane where they're feeling so many emotions that they're not used to, and then look at how they responded. It was super wounded. It was chaotic, right? They destroyed villages, land, people died, like that was their incarnated experience, right? But if you're communicating with like their purest soul essence, like that is very different, right? So maybe, this goddess is going to be offended. Like if she was incarnated and you didn't like put her flowers up properly and like, give her this offering, she was going to be pissed. But that can be a different side of her that's like more of the incarnated personality, as opposed to if I'm communicating with like the oversoul, like the pure soul essence, because on that level sense. they're just pure love. So it just depends which version you're connecting to.
So then is that a part of your intention, is to connect with the soul essence or the purest form of, let's say, the monarch being, or of Isis, or of Cupid, or of Odin? Is that kind of the energy that you take into it more than I guess, but you wouldn't really be channeling the incarnated version, because they're not like, that's just an element, right?
Yeah. Like, so for the type of channeling work that I do, I'm connecting with like the oversoul energy. So I'm connecting with that frequency over any incarnations. And that is something that it has been actually interesting for me, because when I first started channeling and doing like mediumship and psychic work, I was getting definitely a lot more like 3D stuff. Like I was getting a lot more like it was like informational, like this happened here, that world event was like false, and this is what really happened. These are the dates and times this happened. Like this is the city this happened in. Like this is the order of event. It was a lot more like that at the beginning, and the more I have gone into like the type of channeling I'm doing now, I don't get that. It's not that type of information anymore. It's much more like thematic and like about like vibration and energy and what's applicable for us. And when I ask around it, they're like, it's sort of like a vibrational mismatch, because where I'm at vibrationally when I'm channeling these energies to be a frequency match, like I'm outside of space or time. So like if I ask a question that's like, when did this happen? They're like, literally in which timeline? Because like from where I'm communicating with them, they're like, yeah, so okay, I could tell you this happened in this timeline of this incarnation, but there were also all of these other parallel realities where it happens slightly differently. So like which one? Because they all happen. So it's almost like asking those questions is irrelevant, and I've noticed this as well. Like, like Teal sometimes will like ask them stuff and they'll just be like nothing, like does not compute. Like we're not operating within your reality right now, so it doesn't even compute. And that's just the type of channeling work that I'm doing specifically. Right. And I really believe with your spiritual abilities and the different types of channeling and psychic gifts, you're going to become the strongest when you focus in one direction. Right. Like, so there are people everybody has a different thing that they are best at naturally, and they have a different area of expertise. And I really believe in like leaning into that because nobody else can do that. I look at there are people who, are doing so much around like history, like ancient history and like archaeology, and people who are specializing, like using their intuitive gifts to like figure a lot of that stuff out. Like that is sick. Like that is awesome. That is so cool. That's not my area of expertise. Like I get some stuff around that, but that's just not my focus. Right. And vice versa, right? They're like what I'm doing in terms of my trance channeling. A lot of people, those aren't their gifts. Like that's just not going to unlock for them this lifetime. They're not supposed to, so it's different for everybody, right? Some people really focus on like past loved ones, right? Like working with loved ones who have transitioned to the other side. Like there's areas of expertise within that, right? There's animal mediumship. Like we talked about this before, but I just can't emphasize that enough because I think a lot of people miss out on a lot of really incredible experiences and really powerful information because they're trying to like do everything at every time rather than like, what are you naturally really good at? Because no one else is going to be as good as you if you like lean into that,
So how do you find that then, right? Because
you don't find it. That's the thing.
It just comes to you.
It's what's coming to you. What's natural for you. Like to me, it's like what's as natural as breathing. Like, I mean, here's the thing, like with energy work, a lot of people will ask me, they're like, how, like the way I work in the Akashic records, for example, people will say to me like, I've been working in the records for like 10, 15 years and I can't do the stuff you can do in there. And like, I'm like, okay, well, I mean, there's a level to which like there are certain things you can learn, right? But there's also a level to which like, I have a natural strength working in this capacity in this way, right? So it's just a unique gift I have. You have a unique gift too. Stop trying to do it the way I'm doing it and find your own way to work uniquely in the records or outside of the record, whatever you want to do. And like, that's where it's going to feel magical. And the problem is people are looking around at what other people are doing. They're like, oh, I want to do that. And like, you're missing out on where you're most magnetic and magical, right? Which is like your unique gifts. There are things that you have that nobody else can do. And so I think like one of the biggest things I always say, it's like people are just wasting so much time trying to copy each other. It's just a waste of time. And you're always working at like 70, even if you're the best at that, you're working at like 70% of your potential. And if you just did it completely your own way, like nobody else, that's how you get 100%.
It's so fascinating, and it's reminding me in my life of working with my dreams, astral projection, lucid dreaming. It was stuff that I was like, for probably a year, I was like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And recently I had on a dream oracle on my podcast. Her name's Holly, and she's all about actually just utilizing the dreams for messages. So it's like the element of releasing control so that it can just tell you a message. And whenever I did that, when I made that switch from trying to be in control of my dreams to just using them for messages, it was crazy. Like every single night I was dreaming, I was having like these profound messages, very complex, detailed dreams that were just coming to me. And I think it's highlighting exactly what you're saying, where the dream world isn't for me at this time to be using it at the capacity of lucid dreaming or astral projection. It's more this landscape of spirit, of source to communicate with me messages or themes throughout my life that I'm able to use to actually figure out and integrate with into the present day, into this present physical 3D reality. And I'm going to transition this into what I started off this podcast with, which was that shift that kind of happened last night. And first of all, do you feel like there's a energetic, because I feel like you're, talking about your gifts, I feel like your gifts are able to kind of turn on and see things a lot more, what's the word? Vividly, more vividly than probably the average person. So first of all, as just like a question, do you see or feel like there's a big shift that has occurred maybe since the last time that we've talked?
I do, but I do. It's like there was a big realization shift, whatever. How do I actually get this? But it doesn't feel like it's fully settled in. It feels like you got it. I got it. Right. But I haven't lived it yet. Like, it's like, oh, it's like, it's still kind of, it's like, oh, I'm new. You know what it reminds me of? If it's like, overnight, like, Harry Potter in one instant finds out he's a wizard, and it's like, okay, I'm a wizard, and like I know it, and I'm like, okay, I'm doing it, but it hasn't. It's like not until he's like halfway through Hogwarts, he's like, okay, like I'm a wizard, right?
Yeah.
It's like that kind of thing of like, it feels like there's a shift there, like, but it hasn't fully like imprinted. Does that make sense?
No, it does. And allow me to expand a little bit more. I was leaving you in the dark a little because I wanted to test the waters. Not that I don't trust you, of course, but, just to play a little game. So I'll put it this way. The intention that I was like taking into my going to bed was, and honestly, guys, if you're listening, this is a fucking powerful ass intention. You can workshop it for how you want, but it was, if I was always joyful, what would I remember about myself that I'm not remembering now? And what came to me in my dreams last night was essentially a past life with, I'm going to leave the people out of it because it's people I haven't even discussed this yet with, but it was a past life with people that are in my life. And, I was married to one of them, and then another one of them actually came in and killed me. Like whenever, I'm trying to leave it vague on purpose, but it's weird because it's like this very traumatic almost remembrance, but it brought so much joy to me this morning. And it was like so profound. And to your point, like, I don't really know what to do with it. I don't know how to integrate it at this point, but even just waking up this morning, I felt so much more joy and almost at peace, just remembering this thing that had occurred in a past life with different souls that I'm fucking around with in this life. Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is that you don't have to know, right? Like how to, like what to do with it. Like you don't have, it's just like, it's like, sure. I always say, like, it's like your Jello, you just have to let it set. It's just going to set, so it's like, you don't have to do anything. And like from that, things are going to kind of unlock over time as they're supposed to. But the big thing was, in you setting that intention, it brought forward exactly what you needed to remember to like live as joy, right? And just in the remembrance, the energy can clear and move so that like anything that you're still holding on to, and this is the thing, when we die in a traumatic way, there wasn't time for us usually in that lifetime to like heal that, which is why we'll bring some of that into. It was a real fast
like death. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Right. And so it's like sometimes all we have to do, and this is why past life work can be, one of the many reasons why it can be so healing. Sometimes it's just knowing what happened, clears it immediately. And it's like, oh, that happened. And then it just released. And then now any of that was just stuck, just moved. And so now you're back to joy. Simple as that.
So powerful. And where I actually go with this, and this comes into discernment, because there was a past life that I was working with, a different one, where I figured out who the person was. Do I really want to go down that? No, well, the point is, how do you discern if you're supposed to kind of share these things with other people? Because this can be heavy shit. To me, it gave me this huge sense of joy, but if I go up to these people and I'm like, oh yeah, we lived in a past life together, and then this person killed me, and I tell these people that can like, I don't want to say traumatize, like re-traumatize, but it can be a block. Like it can also almost re-invoke that block within them. So how do you almost balance this discernment of whether or not you even share this with other people? If you share this with the people, is it kind of just feeling into the discernment of it if it feels aligned?
I mean, like when you mean share with other people, you mean the people involved?
Correct.
I
Because obviously I'm sharing it with people if we're talking about it right now.
I mean, I don't share it with people unless it comes up. Like if I'm supposed to share it with somebody, it's because there's going to be some situation that comes up where they're essentially asking me to, like. But I'm not going to share, like, that's my personal process. And if they're supposed to know, like, they're supposed to know. And I think that's a huge issue, like, of people giving intuitive information. Like, I don't think people realize how much that can mess with people and how much that can shift the trajectory of their life, to be honest. And I see this a lot with people just, like, especially when gifts are new, right? And people are excited and they're just like, they're out to lunch and they're like, oh my God, I just heard, yeah, you should break up with him. Oh yeah, that's your life partner. Oh yeah, like they're just saying you're gonna have a baby with that person. Like, and people who do that, they're well intentioned, but that can fundamentally fuck someone's like life trajectory. Like it can totally shift it. That can really mess with somebody's head, and that's not like our job to do that. Like I don't believe in sharing that stuff with somebody unless like it's going to come, if it comes up in a way where somebody's essentially asking, Well,
do you feel like this kind of comes back into the power dynamic where it almost puts you in this position of authority, or is it almost that you invoking this would set them off on a different timeline, whether or not they believe in you, whether or not they agree with you, just the invocation of it can like splinter their trajectory?
Well, I think there's for sure the piece of like, if I'm going to tell somebody, you check in. If I'm going to tell somebody any piece of information, I have to check in with, why am I saying this? Is any of this like why? What would be the purpose? Like, what is my real intention? So that's one piece. The second piece is like a psychic responsibility. There's 98% of the intuitive information I receive, I do not tell anybody. I don't need to tell anybody. I don't have to. I tell what the guides tell me to share. Okay. But the way I receive more information is because I'm responsible with it. The same way, if a friend tells me something personal and I go and I blab about it to all my other friends, why would she ever tell me anything else? Sure. But the thing is that it's for the same reason. Why is there not full disclosure yet? We're not ready. When we're ready, there will be full disclosure. Okay. And so that's what people are like it's the same thing. It's a responsibility piece. Our inner child, our ego is like, I want to know now. Mom, tell me. ETs, tell us. Give us all the information. What's going to happen? It's so immature the way that people act, to be honest. And it's like, it's for our highest and best. Really, And so there's a lot of stuff that, and to me, this is just basic. Like if you're learning to work with people, I mean, when you work with people, you have to be responsible with this. Like, so for me, that bleeds out into my personal life as well. But it's like, I get a lot of information in a session with somebody, and this is somebody who's opted in, right? And with every single thing I'm getting, I'm asking, is this something that I'm communicating with them? And sometimes it's no. Sometimes it's just for me to know. And then because I know it, I can ask helpful questions to help that person release whatever the energy is without them actually knowing what it is. Because it's not always going to serve someone for them to know that their, parent in this lifetime was their arch nemesis in the last lifetime and killed them brutally. Like that's not always going to serve somebody. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it doesn't. And it goes back to, I think we talked about this before, like the classic, this happens a lot where I will see a relationship or even a business, and I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work out. But that person they're not bringing up their relationship or they're not bringing up whatever the thing is. And they're like, yeah, I'm super happy there. Like everything's going well. I'm not going to just say, oh, well, guess what? In 5 years, it's going to fall apart. That is not serving them. Like if it's going to fall apart in 5 years, it will, because something's going to happen later on. Right. But if they're happy right now and things are going well right now, then great, that's where they're supposed to be right now. Right. So I might just ask a question of like, yeah, so how are you feeling in your relationship? And they'll be like, oh my God, amazing. Like, he or she is just so incredible. Like I feel so seen. I'm like, great. And when I hear that, then okay, cool. And then we move on. Right. It's not relevant right now. So I just feel like that's like, it's discernment, it's responsibility. It's again, like checking our ego of like why we're saying things. And also for me, just like showing up in highest service, because just blabbing a bunch of stuff isn't always in highest service. The same way, I think it's the same kind of personality type of, you know, when people are saying things that you don't agree with in person or on the internet, like, why do some people have the urge to go like tell them off? You know what I mean? Like where is that urge coming from? Like, I don't care. Like you do your thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Is it really in highest service, like for the collective? You know, there are times to speak up, but there are nuances to speaking up, because it's all about like getting really clear with what is my intention and like what am I giving my energy to? You know, and I think for me, it's just like, I don't care. Like if I don't ask for somebody's opinion, I don't need it. Like if I want someone's opinion, I'm asking for it. Right. And so I'm the same way on the opposite side. Like unless somebody's asking if you ask my opinion, I will fucking give it. But if someone's not, if someone's not asking, I'll just listen.
So how do you handle situations like that? Because like, I know and this kind of ties back to what we were talking about earlier, where you see the misalignment, let's say, or the energetic block that they need to overcome. And yet you hear them kind of just, let's say, complaining. Maybe it's not complaining energy. It feels like complaining energy. They're complaining. And you're sitting there like, I know what the answer is. Do you kind of just sit there and smile and nod and wait for them to actually invoke a question? Or do you kind of just play with it and have fun? Like what's like your mindset whenever someone's coming to you with complaining energy, but not looking for a solution?
So I'm going to assume this is like a friend. Is that an example you're talking about? Like,
sure.
I'm assuming this isn't like a stranger. If this is this is a stranger, I'm just exiting the situation.
Yeah, that's probably not someone. They're probably not sober, so it's probably someone you want to
right. So I'm assuming this
friends
is
and family.
Okay. So like a friend feeling that kind of situation, right? Somebody like I know, right? And they're talking and they're like complaining, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I could solve this for you in 2 seconds. I will ask them. I'll say like, I was like, do you want me to hold space and just listen, or are you asking for my opinion? Or I'll say, do you want me to tune in for you? Because I'm that kind of person, right? Because my friends will come to me and they'll say a bunch of stuff, and I never know. So I always ask. I say, do you want me to just listen? Do you want my thoughts, or do you want me to ask the guides? And they'll usually be like, oh no, I want you to ask the guides. And I'll be like, okay, great. And I just do it. Right. But I'm making sure I'm getting them to opt in. And sometimes people say stuff and they're like, no. And they'll be like, no, they're like, I know what you're going to say. They're like, I just needed to vent. And I'm like, okay, great. Then I'll just vent. And then I emotionally am not having any like pressure on myself. I'm like, that's all they needed was me to just hold the space. It's not my job to solve other people's problems, you know? And I think like the other piece of that is, you know, I think that a big way that lesson for me got really imprinted of like tuned in, like embodied, like a knowing was because I have seen how it has really damaged close relationships in my life. Like I have seen, especially in romantic relationships, like if I'm not conscious of that, it could easily turn into like I'm becoming the coach to my partner. And I don't want to be my boyfriend's coach. I want to be his girlfriend, you know? So it's like, I am aware of when, and like when I was younger and less mature, whenever anybody would say something, I would be like, oh, I want to solve their problem, and I can. So I would, right? But then in romantic relationships is where I really saw it I was like, whoa, this is throwing me like really out of whack. And I realized like, I need to learn and grow and mature in this area. And just learning a lot more about romantic relationship dynamics and polarity, I realized, oh, like that's not my responsibility. Like why do I think it's my responsibility to solve everybody else's problem? Well, because I learned that at a young age from people in my life, in my family, from adults around me who taught me that it was my job to solve all of their problems, right? But then as an adult, I realized, oh, this is actually damaging for a lot of relationships. And so since recognizing that and being more conscious, and every single time a friend or like my boyfriend, like any time anybody's just, you know, kind of energy vomiting, I'm just asking like, what is supportive for you right now? Like, do you want me to just listen to you? Right. Or do you want my opinion?
And that feels like something that could be so helpful for them as well, because they might not even know or just even be conscious of what they're doing. And by you even just taking that second to be like, okay, do you need space? Do you need suggestions? Do you need the guides? Like, what do you need? You know, even just taking that step back, they can kind of like just reframe them of like, oh shit, I'm complaining again. Why am I complaining? You know, coming back to like, why am I doing what I'm doing?
Totally. I mean, it's helpful for me when people ask me that, right? And like, because I do that, people in my life like have learned that from me. And so then they do it to me. And it's really helpful for me because I will tell you 98% of the time, I'm like, I'll be like, I just need you to hold space and listen to me because I already know what the answer is. I just need to fucking be bratty about this for 5 minutes, you know? Like,
I need to be human about this.
Yeah, you know, I just need to be human and like get it out. And then as soon as I get it out, I'm good. And then I feel like invigorated because I know like what my next move is, or like I know I just need some space to like, yeah, to have a human moment and just like, you know, whatever. To have somebody just hear me. And then that in itself is healing. Like that just moves the energy. So I know I love when people ask me that question because I know that I get annoyed when I just want to vent. People are trying to solve my problems. I'm like, I don't need you to fix this. But then that's my fault because I should have from the beginning said, hey, I don't need you to fix this. I'm not looking for a solution. I just need a vent. Right. So for me, this has just taught me a lot about communication.
It's difficult though, because when you're in that mindset of the venting energy, it's kind of like, it's not of the same energy to be like, hey, I need to vent. Like, can you just hold space for me to vent? And
I think it is for
really?
Sure.
Are you able to train yourself into doing that or?
Oh, totally. Like 100%, like to me, that's just communication. Like I think I'm a pretty good communicator. I would say that's probably one of my biggest strengths is communication. I'm good at mediating situations. I'm good at difficult conversations. Like
definitely a direct communicator.
Yeah, but you know, I'm good at like if there's conflict or if there's a heated conversation or something touchy, I'm very good in those situations. I always have been. And so for me, it's a communication skill. And so if I'm like annoyed and upset and I'm like, oh, I need a vent, like I'll go to whoever and I'll be like, I am like in a mood. I need to just vent for a minute. Like, and then I'll be over. I don't need you to fix this, but can you just listen to me? And then they'll be like, yeah. And then I just go off and do my thing and then I feel better.
Interesting. I like it. I like it a lot. I think that's like, it's definitely a question or a dynamic I need to bring into my life a little bit more. But I mean, it really touches on pain, love, and purpose. So I don't know if you knew this because when I was talking to your assistant, she said the book wasn't going to arrive, but
yeah, well, I told her I didn't know if it would get there in time, but I'm glad it did.
It got here in time.
Good.
So I read something online. First of all, again, okay, so it's really interesting, right? Because the manifestation mastery, whenever I read like a chapter of that, like it has this like energy of like, I need to just like rest and let this like sink in. But it's interesting. I've probably read 5 to 8 to 10, maybe poems. And it's crazy because there's nothing like wild in, this is going to be a compliment at the end of it. There's nothing like wild about the words or like what's being said. But usually, like towards the end of every single poem, I feel like tears kind of coming to my eyes. It's like a very interesting like energy or dynamic behind every single poem that you have in here. So I don't. Are you able to like elaborate on why I'm feeling like? And it's not like I'm crying, but it's like there's definitely like tears, like water's coming to the eyes. So like, what's happening? Why am I experiencing this like energetic discharge with every poem that I'm reading?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons why I love.
Hold on, I lost your audio.
Oh,
I don't know if it's you or me.
Am I still gone?
I can't hear you. All right, let me stop this recording. We'll try again. All right, cool. The energetic discharge of whatever the hell's going on here.
We keep getting kicked off because the frequency's so high. You know that, right?
I do know that actually. Whenever who did I have on? Oh, I had King Cassius on, and we were talking about aliens and like, and every single time we got to something, it was just like there was a cut on the thing. But it hasn't happened in a while. But
it's always a joke on my like mastermind calls or like my group, like calls, because it happens all the time. Like these calls can be a struggle because we just get kicked off constantly because it's so high. Like, the vibration is so high. But crazy. Anyway, with this book, you know, one of the things I love about it is like, that was the whole point of like taking a really intense complex emotion, like taking emotions, right? And putting them into like the simplest language and poem possible. Just like simple, you know, and it's like a piece of art or interior design. You walk into and it's just so simple and you're like, whoa, beautiful. Right. And I just think like for me, that contrast energetically of like taking such a complex emotion or emotionally charged experience, and it's something that feels like this big energy ball of all over the place, right? And just like putting it in this really simple form, there's something so just like healing about that, right? It's like there are a million things I could say to somebody about how incredible they are and give them all these compliments, but saying I love you and really meaning it trumps everything, right? Like I don't need to sit here for 10 minutes to talk about all these other things when I have a real I love you that has all the energy charged behind it, right? And with every single poem in here, like there is a memory from me and a core emotion frequency that was like embedded in each one, you know? And to be honest, it's sort of difficult for me to articulate, but when I'm doing energy work, it's like I always say, it's like I'm conducting a symphony. Like there's all this stuff going on. I'm doing all this stuff. It's like I'm doing surgery, you know? And there's a moment where I'm like, done, complete. Like we just nailed it. And it's like this moment of satisfaction. And with the poems, it was a really similar feeling for me. Like I was like in this intense like emotion and it's like coming through and I'm like just like channeling this poem. And then at the end, it was like complete, done, closed, healed, finalized. Like, and I felt like every poem, it just encapsulated something. And it's really interesting about this book is it is simple. You can sit down and you could read it in a sitting, you know, but it's always interesting for me because some people will tell me, they're like, I sat down and I just like devoured it. Like I read the whole thing. I just read the whole thing. I was laughing. I was crying. I was feeling whatever. And I just couldn't put it down. And then I have other people who will tell me, they're like, I can't read more than one poem a day because it's so intense for me. And I just think that's really interesting to hear these different experiences. And it just goes to show that like, you know, with my work, like words are just holding the zip file, you know, and every single book, like these two books, the books I'm going to put out, like, I think what's cool is for the reader and for me to have this experience of, I can feel the energy of this. Like something just got like unlocked in me, transmitted to me that is so beyond what these words are. Like it's just you know what I mean? They're just the vessel through which it's coming to me, but it's an energy. It's unlocking something within me. And that's why I love like energy work in general, right? It's magic. And these books to me are a way to transmit that to people. So, you know, when you're reading these books and then at the end you're feeling like an emotion come up, it's because that just unlocks something within you, right? Like whether or not you had the same exact experience, there's a vibrational resonance somewhere within you that just got like touched, right? Because you could feel me, that piece of you was felt within you. And then that is clearing that and healing that for you. And that's really what this book is. It's a book of healing, you know? And so I feel like that's what you're feeling for sure.
It's pretty crazy. Yeah, it's yeah, I think what did I do? How did I read it? Oh, I just opened up the front cover, or I opened up the chapters, and I kind of just looked for the keywords because you kind of have them basically titled as like emotions, or maybe not emotions, not the right word.
Yeah, so there's three sections. The first is pain, the second is love, and the last is purpose. So there are pain poems, love poems, and purpose poems. And then the table of contents, like every poem has a name. So, you know, you can like go to a certain section if you like that kind of energy. Obviously pain is a lot heavier than like the other ones. Or, you know, a lot of people use it as an oracle, like, you know, just every day, just like open to a random page. I heard you say that.
Let's dive on that because I heard you say that about it being an oracle. But then my mind went to, okay, I know the first third is pain. I know the middle third is love. And then the last one's purpose. So does that influence what I'm going to pick, or how do you use it, I guess, as like an oracle book per se?
Well, I mean, you just gotta like let go of it. You just, I just go in like this really fast.
Being too masculine is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, you're just overthinking it. You know what I mean? Like I know where these poems are, but like when I'm using it as an oracle, I'm just letting go of that, and I'm just flipping through back like really fast, and then just like wherever it ends up is gonna end up. It'll
like shoot out at you which one you need to pick up.
But like if somewhere within you like are like I want a pain poem, like, or I want a purpose poem, like, then you're gonna like probably try and make your hand land towards the end, and like that's fair too, because somewhere intuitively you want a purpose poem, so let it be a purpose poem. So then how do you discern that? Is it like if I look at this, it's like, is it that I am feeling pain? I should go to that one. Am I feeling love? Should I go to that one? Am I searching for purpose? Should I go to that one? Or is this kind of just a choose your own adventure? This is like, I mean, look, you can use this book however you want. It's just a book, right? There are no rules. So read it like a book. Read it. I mean, somebody asked me like, well, I said, like, if I was to tell you what I think, I would read the book from start to finish, and then I would go back and I would just use it as an oracle every day. Or like, if you just feel like there's a certain poem that you love, and I'm like, I want to read that one today, then go read it. That's how I use it. But it is a story, from start to finish, if you like want to read it that way. But I think you're too in your head with this.
Oh, maybe.
Okay. Right? Like it's like anything else. It's like, how do you pull oracle cards? You don't think about it. You spread them out. You just pick the ones, and they're the correct ones. There's going to be something in there for you, right? But if it's like, I don't know. I mean, I think it depends on your personality type too, or just like what you need. Sometimes when I'm really emotional and sad, like I want also an emotional and sad thing. Sometimes I want something uplifting to pull me out, but sometimes I just want to like feel it, so maybe I'll go to pain.
Well, because maybe a portion of it is because I want to use this as an oracle deck right now and actually read one on the thing. Do you have a favorite one? Let's do that. Do you have a favorite one that you like?
I have a lot of favorite ones. I have favorite ones like within each section.
Okay. Do you have a favorite one for reading on a podcast right now?
Yeah, I do. Actually.
Oh, wow. No, we're doing this one. I landed on this one. It's called Good Questions.
Oh, that's perfect for you.
Oh my gosh. And I just remembered, I don't think I've read this one yet, because on the front of it, you said, keep asking amazing questions.
Yeah.
Most powerful people do. Okay, we're reading this one.
What page is it?
It is 223 or 225. Got dark lighting here, so it's hard for me to see. That'd been crazy if it was on 222. Oh, I saw there was a poem called 222. Did you put that on page 222?
I didn't, but I love that poem as well.
I read that one pretty quickly. That was a cool one.
It's a good one.
All right, so do you want to read it or do you want me to read it?
I don't care. What do you want?
All right, I'll do it. I got it. Good questions. I feel safer asking the questions than being on the other side, but the danger I feel over there also makes me feel so alive. My love language is questions. It's the way I know if you care. The way I respond tells us both, if with you, I'll really go there. There's something about a good question that really opens me up. It's like finding the key to unlock the door that you know has always been shut. So don't be afraid to ask me what you really want to know. It's usually the question we're too scared to ask that takes us where we want to go. Fuck, that's good.
That's so good for you. Look, see?
It ripped me apart. Yeah.
What? It ripped you apart. Tell me more. Tell me more.
It's reminding me of past relationships. Is that in the love section? Holy shit, that's in the love section.
No, it's in the purpose.
Purpose. Okay. Purpose. It was reminding me though of like past relationships whenever what was it? Being afraid to ask like a certain question or having a certain belief about insecurities where I would like build up this monster. My big one was acne. And it was kind of like, I always had it as like this thing where I would kind of like get like real sneaky. Like whenever I was like with a girl, I would always kind of like turn my back towards them so they like wouldn't see my acne and like kind of like, exit the room, everything to try to hide it. And I remember asking a girl about it, like, hey, like, I remember bringing it up or asking her about like acne in general. And she was like, I don't give a shit. I was like, what do you mean you don't give a shit? And that was like really the first time that I like dove into actually realizing like my own insecurities were like my thing, and no one else like gave a shit about the things that I was insecure about. And because then we had this whole conversation about what she was insecure about. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, that's amazing about you. And it was crazy because it was like this whole thing of like this drummed up monster. But if it's just, you just ask the question, it's like, you know, it can be scary to ask, it can be scary to like adventure into, but it unlocks like this new chapter or evolution for you.
Yeah. Wow, I love that. See, I
Yeah.
love hearing people's connections to it, you know?
It's
So
pretty cool.
that one's perfect for you. I feel like I always tell people like when people say, what's your love language? I'm like, questions. I like good questions are my love language. Like literally, it's exactly what I said in this poem.
Maybe that's why I thought it was in the love section.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of these, you know, are subjective. I put them in the section I wanted them to go in. But yeah, I feel like for me, something that has been in all types of relationships, like difficult for me is I feel like a lot of people don't really ask questions. And to me, when someone's asking me questions about myself, it's because they're interested in me. Like that's how they're expressing an interest, whether that's in any capacity. Like they give a shit. They're curious. They want to know more about me. And to me, if you want to know more about me, then that's like, I care about you, you know? And I've just, you know, have a lot of people in my life who I've met and like, they don't ask me any questions about myself. And I'm like, this is really weird. Right? Like I'm asking all of these questions about you because I'm curious about you, and you're never asking me anything about me. And to me, I take that as a sign of like, oh, I guess you don't really care to learn about me. Because if you care, you're going to want to learn about me. So I always say like, that's my love language. That's how I know if somebody gives a shit is if they're asking questions.
Well, I think it's so true. Right. And
Yeah.
it's interesting. I mean, I think there's so much truth to it. Like,
yeah.
Well, I guess I'm not trying to call you a liar, but I remember like kind of like along my journey, whenever I was like a little bit more, less socially inept or conversational. It was like that barrier was the questions. Like I wasn't trying to learn much about other people. It was like more of this like internal bravado of, you know, everyone should be asking me about myself. But it's interesting because it's like one of those, like you get what you give kind of thing. Like if you want people to ask about you, you should ask about them, you know, and it should be this like mutual exchange. And it's honestly a beautiful way to figure out who does care, right? Like if you're sitting there asking all these questions and then they're not, you ask them about their business, their like life, their hobbies, and then they aren't going off it and like asking you the same thing. It's like, okay, is this really someone you want to be around?
No, 100%. Yeah, I have had that a lot. I think especially in dating, that's like my clearest. That's a really common thing. You know, I'll just say like I work with a lot of women and like we talk about dating and relationships all the time. Like that's like the main topic of conversation. Every iteration of my business, it's, you know, you're always talking about relationships and this is like the main female complaint. It's like, how come guys don't ever ask you any questions? And obviously there are many men who do, right? But it's like a very common thing of like to go on a date and you're like, I'm carrying the whole conversation, right? And especially when you're a podcast host, right? And you're just used to asking a lot of questions and other people aren't used to it. So, you know, whenever I notice somebody asks good questions, I'm like, oh, this is somebody I could have this is an actual conversation. It's two-sided, you know? So I don't know how much of that is like, because it comes across as like self-interest, like just self-interested, you know, like I just care about myself when that's not actually usually what's going on. It's usually just like they're not used to asking a lot of questions for whatever reason. Or they're just not like used to being asked so many questions. Like a lot of people, like no one's ever asked me this much. So they just keep receiving it. So it's just an interesting conversation
That's a good
dynamic,
point too.
I find.
Here's an interesting thing with like relationships and questions as well. I feel like I never really like ask questions, I don't think, that really dive into like their family, for instance, like how many brothers, sisters, what's the relationship with your parents? I mean, and so like I could kind of tell you who people are, kind of like at a general sense. But then it always kind of strikes me as odd because, and I think my mom usually asks me questions about that other people and like, well, what's their family dynamic? Like, who are their brother and sisters? How many siblings? And it's like, it's interesting to me because it's almost like the physical items don't really come up or interest me. Is that like a dynamic that you've seen as well, where the questions changing between like who is in your life versus, and as I'm speaking this out loud, I see the importance of it, but maybe the questions of like, you know, how many siblings do you have versus like knowing you or knowing someone at like a deeper level of, okay, good questions is your love language.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the questions that you gravitate toward first, like naturally, you know, are going to be indicative of what values and things are most important to you. Like whatever you're looking for
That's
most in a romantic partner or in a friendship, like whatever questions you're asking first, you're going to go for the things that are what you want to know of, like, is this a potentially a good match? You know, so for me, I'm the same way of like, if I'm first getting to know somebody, like I usually like forget about that stuff. Like, you know, how many siblings do you have? Or like what, like I'm getting the other stuff first just to kind of like pre-qualify. Right. And then, cause if we can get to the other stuff, great, cool. So then tell me more about what's going on there. Right. So like my order of operations is maybe different than somebody else, or maybe somebody else, one of their top priorities is I want somebody who's, I don't know, like comes from a big family, or they're really close with their parents, or like some people, like that's a top priority for them, you know, versus my top priorities are like, do you talk to your spirit guides? You know, like, is that okay? Are you doing personal work? Like, is this person do like personal development, like real work? You know, so it tends to be a different conversation straight off the bat. And then I get to other things later. So I think it's just like, you know, whatever seems most important to you personally, which is a preference. And I think also, you know, in earlier generations, like I think about like our parents' generation, you know, like when you're looking for a romantic partner, for instance, the questions you're asking, like the order in which you're asking them is going to be indicative of like, you know, based on that generation of like, what am I looking for in a partner? Right? Like, what's their family like? Like, can they, can they provide for me? Like, is this going to make sense logically? Where are you from? Like, what's your career? Like, will this work logically? Right? And that was more of the first thing. We got to make sure the logic's going to work. And then it was more of the emotional stuff, like secondary. And I think our generation is much, because logic isn't as important. Like, you know, I could be in a long distance relationship. There's the internet. Like, we're less worried about that. And if you're here listening to this, you're the type of person where it's probably the most important thing for you is, can this person meet me emotionally, intellectually in conversation? Because I can't have dry conversations, right? It's just not going to do it for me. So if that's your top priority, then that's what you're going to be going for, you know, first. And so I find, yeah, I'm similar, where it's kind of like, that's not the first thing I'm going for, but I can also tell, if I'm being honest, if let's say I went on a date with somebody and, you know, we're sitting down like, so like, where are you from? How many siblings do you have? What do your parents do? And that's the first thing they're asking me. I can kind of tell like, okay, we might be different kinds of people, because that's the first thing, you know, not always, but I can just sort of tell, like, you know, if that's where your brain is going first, that's the first thing you want to know about me. Then we might kind of just think differently.
Gotcha. No, that's honestly it's really powerful observation, because I know that I've had, how do I want to articulate this? Not insecurities, but maybe self-doubt of knowing people whenever I get hit with those types of questions. And you then approach it of like, well, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how many siblings they have. I don't know, you know, what their parents' status is. I don't know what these things are. And I feel like that's so important, especially probably for this audience specifically, even more so, because if you're like, it gives this feeling of thinking that you don't truly know who you're talking to, because you don't know the answers to the questions that maybe somebody in your life cares about the answers to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and it's like, what does it mean to really know someone? Right. And you know what I will say is like, I can have I think about people who I have a session with. Okay. And in 1 hour, people will tell me, people have said this to me gazillion times. holy shit, after 1 hour, you know me better than anybody in my whole life. Right.
That's crazy.
And they say that they feel that, right? They'll say that to me. And I look at that person, I'm like, yeah, I know you intimately, right? Like whenever you do this type of work with somebody, like it's an intimate relationship. It's really personal stuff. It's like your deepest fears and insecurities and biggest blocks and biggest dreams and like all of that stuff. A lot of the stuff you don't tell anyone else, right? Or it doesn't come up much. And like, no, that person will say that to me. And I'm like, yeah, I know you very, very well. Right. And they leave. And you know what I don't know about them? I don't know what their parents do. I don't know how many siblings they have. I mean, maybe if it came up, but it's probably just around one sibling who's annoying them, something like that. It's like all of those logistics I don't necessarily know, and I don't need to just to really know that person. Right. For me, I personally tend to establish like a deep emotional connection with somebody and get to know like, what's going on in their emotional, mental, energetic space. And then I'm starting to learn about the other things. I think the other things are really important, right? Like, I want to know, like, who do you spend a lot of time with? Who's important to you in your life? Like, what is your relationship with your parents? Because that is important to me. Like, to be honest, like I think about for a romantic relationship, like we have to be okay with what each other's relationships with our families are like. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
And that could go so many different directions, but like that's a real part of my life or my friends or like, my work, to me, like my work, it's like what I do is a more tangible thing, but that's also so much of who I am. And also the logistics related to that is a big piece of me, how I'm spending my days and like what my schedule is like generally, so like those things are important. I think it's all important. I just, tend to go for the other things first. I think it depends, how long you've known someone too.
There's definitely a lot of factors that go into it. And maybe the whole crux of it is to just not put weight on not knowing someone because you don't know the answers to certain questions about them that other people hold in higher regards to others, or hold in higher regards to themselves than you do about yourself.
But you know what I think is interesting? It's like just getting curious about like, why is that what we want to know individually? Like if let's say I am telling my parents like, oh, I met this amazing person. Like, we do all this fun stuff. He makes me feel like always like I feel so seen and understood. He's super supportive, blah, blah, blah. And my mom or something is like, but she doesn't do this, but I'm just giving this an example. Let's say she was like, well, what do his parents do? Well, how much money does he make? Right? Like my mom would never ask that, but like, I'm just giving an example. Like
no,
that immediately is telling, that immediately would give me an indication if I just ask, like, why does she care about that? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, why is that the first thing she's asking? Like, why is the first thing she's asking what the relationship is with the parents, or like what they do? Like, I'm like, oh, that is indicating to me a certain priority she has. But just because it's a priority she has doesn't mean it's mine.
Right. And I think what you're highlighting right there is a perfect example, because I think maybe myself, I would have taken, if I said I don't know to those answers, it would have disrupted confidence in myself of if this person is truly someone that I care about, or like, it's like, oh shit, I don't know what their parents do. I don't know how much money they make. Like, do I actually care about this person? It's almost taking on their priorities as your own, as opposed to understanding what you're looking for in a relationship and kind of moving from that energy, as opposed to taking on theirs and being like, oh shit, like I don't know those things. Like, do I care about this person? Is this person important? Is this person I want to see again? Yeah.
Well, we have to look at, this is like my whole next book, like what it's about. But
well, it's a good little prelude to
it. What do we connect over? The problem in a lot of relationships up until this point is people connect and build relationships over surface level shit. It's not about real soul resonance. And that's why the relationships don't work out. That's why the relationships stay surface level. Right. And like, that's what most people have been taught, because what used to be the priority was like, marriages were business arrangements back in the day, right? Or just like logistics, like who's gonna have my child, right? Who's going to
Right.
be able to provide for me? And then we move into like something kind of similar of like, does this make sense? Like, can they provide for me? Do they take care of me? Right. In whatever way that is, does this person look good on my arm? Like whatever it is, and then it's like, oh, what do we connect over? Oh, we both have, we both are from this place. We both like to do this hobby. We both come from this type of family, right? We both share this in common. And what's really cool now is, and I think that's what, if we look at how, especially it's really cool how different cultures are like mixing now and like different relationships, you're seeing different cultures come together. It's because people are like not just connecting over surface level stuff, right? Like we don't have to come from the same place or have the same traditions to have a lot in common and to like have deep soul resonance, to be able to really see and understand and love each other on a like really deep level, and I think like we're getting to this space that's really cool where we're able to prioritize that now more than ever before, where there are a lot more, I think, things historically, like in older times where that wasn't even allowed to be a priority. It just wasn't even allowed to be. And now we can have these, we have so much more information and we have a lot more freedom and just ways to connect with people in different ways. And so we can get to know people on a deeper emotional level and we can connect over much deeper things,
And maybe even more so, not even just allowed, but like the environment, the social landscape just didn't even provide opportunity for it, right? I mean, if you're
totally
worried about so many different things, you don't have time to think about, okay, like what's my soul like trying to articulate here and trying to figure out on my path. It's like, nah, it's like, where's the next dollar coming from? Where am I making my next buck? It's like, hey, do you want to have kids? Okay, you want kids? Okay, let's just get together and have kids when we'll just do that thing and just get that all figured out because we have so much other shit to worry about with like our money and, whether or not this country is going to war with this country. And if we're going to get nuked, are they getting nuked? And so it's interesting. We come to maybe all this. Wow, that's actually really crazy because, I've had this kind of thing through my traveling where like first world countries seem to be almost the most unhappy. Like you go to third world countries and they're so much more hospitable. They're so much kinder. People just want to help. And it almost feels like in the first world countries, we got past the issue of worrying about all like the little bullshit. And it's almost like we do need that probably spiritual renaissance of some sort to come about so that we can still find gratitude and appreciation in all of these little things that we experience on a day-to-day basis, because we no longer have a tiger in the jungle that we need to worry about. Mm-hmm. We're in a very insulated and very safe space. I mean, it's the safest it's really been in the longest time. And I know it's not perfect. It's always getting better. But, it really, wow, it really is that these first world countries need to almost have this spiritual renaissance within them in order to become a more harmonious and loving place, because otherwise we're going to just make everything out to be this next tiger in the jungle.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's like,
did we lose your voice again?
Hold on.
Do we need to stop it and restart?
Can you hear me now?
All right, I'll stop the recording. We can restart. Too high of energy, I guess.
We just keep getting kicked off. I don't even know what we were saying. But yeah, I think we have this space. We have the space. We have the luxury of like having like space to prioritize different things. I think I was just thinking about this. I was watching one of those British royalty shows on Netflix, and I like, I love Bridgerton, like all that stuff. And like, most of that is not true, but like, I am so grateful that I am in a space where like I get to choose my husband. And if I chose not to have a husband or if I chose not to have kids, I wouldn't be cast out by society. It's very fortunate that like to live at this time, and then even just, with the access we have, like with the internet, we can meet different people, right? Before we were much more limited by who was around me. I only know who's in my community, who lives on my street, who like was close to me in my neighborhood, right? That's all I knew. And so those were my pool of options. So I'm just gonna like, who's the best fit for me here. But now it's like because we have so many more options, which obviously there are downsides to that, there are also pros of now we can be pickier of like, I'm going to find somebody I have a deep emotional, intellectual connection with, or like I'm going to prioritize whatever I really want to prioritize, you know, and there are pros and cons to all the options. But I feel that, you know, we have a lot more opportunities to connect on much deeper levels now because of resources.
For sure. And this kind of ties into something I was thinking about. When was I thinking about it? I don't know. Sometime before now, about making spirituality maybe more accessible. Because to me, it feels like it's a heavy topic. At least it very well can be, right? We're talking about channeling. We're talking about different dimensions, aliens. And it's like sometimes people are just trying to figure out shit that's going on in their day-to-day life. So to even think about aliens is a luxury in and of itself. So with this idea of like a spiritual, let's say, first world renaissance, have you ever considered or thought about how to inject more maybe play or fun into it? Because this is something that I've been seeing a lot, and I've been looking at the landscape of podcasts, and it seems that it tends to be a very heavy subject that doesn't get a whole lot of mainstream attention. And my thought process is that it's likely because it is a heavy and tough, can be at least, maybe it can be difficult for the average person to conceptualize or discuss. So have you ever considered or thought about what could be put into spirituality to make it more fun, more upbeat? Maybe it's just a charismatic person, but I don't know.
Oh, 100%. I mean, like, I feel really strongly about this. It's why I don't actually have that many like spiritual, like a lot of, I'm not really in the spiritual community. Like I'm not really like friends with a lot of people in the spiritual community. I mean, I just have some, but everybody's so freaking serious. And like, I know people would tell me like, that's a priority for me. People will tell me who are like in my communities that like, one of the reasons why they resonate with me is because like, I'm not a super serious person. Like I can be serious, but I have a very dry sense of humor. I'm sarcastic, and like the way I deliver stuff is funny. Like I make people laugh a lot, you know, and my interaction with my guides makes people laugh. Like people will tell me they're like watching my YouTube videos when I'm channeling and they're like, I'm literally crying laughing. Like this is so fucking funny, you know? And for me, that's super important. That's my personality. And you can take anything. You can take anything. It's spirituality, but any industry, any topic. And like, you can make it this really serious, intense thing, or you can make it fun and like play with it. And to me, spirituality is the most fun thing. It's like life is magic. Like life is literally magical. Like I'm living in the wizarding world of Harry Potter, right? I'm like riding a magic carpet like I'm Aladdin. Like life is like that. And so it's a really fun thing. And to me, it's not like an issue of what the topic is. It's an issue of like, what's the delivery and how are we communicating about it? You know, so I can take any topic and I can be really serious about it, or I can like have fun with it and play around with it. And then, you know, if we're guiding people through experiences, like if you want to inject that play into it, then that's a choice, you know? So I don't think it's like an issue of like, I think spirituality is really heavy and really dense. And I think that's because people are choosing to make it that way, but it doesn't have to be just like anything else.
Interesting. Yeah, because I think that's definitely something that I've been looking at pretty recently and thinking that it's something that this space I feel like needs more of. It seems like something that this space needs that like air of relaxation behind it versus this whole like, I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's interesting how so many people make it heavier than it needs to be. But that's cool. That's cool that you're at least heading that way of injecting that sarcasm and humor into it. And I guess I'm hoping to do the same, and it's probably why I made this joyful piece, you know, intention the other night.
Well, and that can just be like a choice you make, you know, and I think for me, sometimes I'm having conversations with people and like there's always that choice of like, do I meet them at the frequency they're holding right now, or do I hold my own and like try and force them to be on my wavelength in this moment in terms of how we're communicating about this, knowing that maybe they'll calibrate to me, knowing that maybe they will not. And then I'll just be the one laughing about it and they're going to be like really serious, you know? So I think there's a choice we can make. And especially, you know, for me, if I have a guest on my show, for you with guests on your show, like you're the one who's setting the tone. Right? Like the host is the one who's setting the container. And sometimes I get on podcasts and I mean, we're friends, right? So I'm just like being like, we're just chilling. But like sometimes I get on a podcast, and it's somebody I've never met before. And I immediately like, I am trying to tell, like, I'm just kind of, I'm letting them lead, right? Because they know their audience and they know like the energy of the show. So I'm always letting the host like kind of lead the energy. And some people are much more lighthearted and kind of like, we're shooting the shit. Other people, it's just very intense, very serious thing. And I'm like, whoa, okay. And I can just kind of tell based on their questions, and I try to just honor that of whatever the energy of the show is, because if somebody's tuning into that consistently, it's probably what resonates with them. But I think like if, for all of us who want it to not be so serious, because our responsibility of like, I'm going to set my containers up to be at this frequency, so I do that intentionally of like every container I'm setting. And that could be, those are paid containers, but those are also, like podcasts and things like that, or YouTube, like I'm setting the energy, right? So what do I want it to feel like? And what I know for myself in my own journey is like, this path is not easy. There's a lot of deep work. There's a lot of deep thinking. There's a lot of intense thoughts. And I have to have a balance with other stuff. People who know me in my personal life, like I am like super goofy, super weird, not serious, always laughing. Like I'm constantly laughing about everything. And I love being that way. If I was serious all the time, I would be bored. I wouldn't feel good, and for me, it's like, I'm conscious of it because I take like a book like this, right? If I'm doing a deep dive, like we have a deep dive series on this where I'm like, going through page by page and breaking this down, it's intense, it's intense. And so I know I can't even do that level of intensity for that long. So I'm going to inject my own bit of humor into it. If I'm doing a deep dive call, I'm the next day probably going to make some type of YouTube video or whatever that's like a lot lighter. And I'm just like joking around, screwing around. And I think that people learn best through humor, to be honest. There's a reason why that resonates, and like people really are able to receive information that way. And that is something that, since I was young, my guides always told me, they said like, never lose your sense of humor, like make sure that you're always bringing that into everything you do. And it's so it helps other people, but it's also for my own sanity, because like, if we can't have fun with it, there's no point.
Oh, for sure. No, that was for sure something I think that was, I don't want to say bogging me down, but something I was trying to reconcile myself, where if you have these 2-3 hour conversations with people and it's very serious, like just weighs on you energetically. And like at the end of the day, it was like, it's like, I would have to like take an hour to myself to just like chill the fuck out and like let all that energy go. And then there was this other element, and I don't know, I'm hesitating to go into this. I don't know why I'm hesitating to go there. I'm hesitating to go there because this feels like it's coming from a place of ego. Humbly as I can say, there's a desire in me, and honestly, it got to this place of like this inner knowing where I see myself as being someone who's at the top of top podcast charts in general. It's just like this thing that I want, and there's this internal knowing. And I think this is where that fun is kind of coming back into it of, why are there no spirituality at the top of these charts? Why in the top 10 of all podcasts is it like some chick talking about sex, some dude who just randomly talks about jokes, a scientist, people who talk about the NFL and sports. And so to me, it was trying to dissect this idea of like, why is there no spirituality in like the top 10? And I think there's this element of like that fun. And then I don't know the other reason I brought that up. Maybe I just wanted to say that, but I'm not sure where else I was trying to go with that.
Well, let me add some to that. I think like there's just a numbers piece to that of like, if you look at, the 8 billion people on the planet and like where are most of those people vibrating, and what are most of them searching? Like those of us who are having these conversations, like we're in our own bubbles, right? Where it's like everybody in my world is like on this wavelength. This is everything around me. But like, I am well aware that like 98% of the population has no fucking idea what I'm talking about. Right? So just like,
you're a crazy chick that probably needs to go to an insane asylum.
Yeah. Right. So it's like just logistically, number wise, I would be shocked if there was a spirituality podcast on top 10 general of iTunes. Like just from a numbers perspective, until way more of the planet wakes up. But it's like, that's what it's like to be at the leading edge of anything, right? Like that's what any scientist, doctor, researcher who like made the biggest discovery that was life changing. They were the 1% that thought that was legit. Everybody else was like, no, why would we think about that, research that, look into that? Like, you're crazy, you know? So to me, there's just like a numbers piece. I mean, to me, I would think more about like, you know, top 10 of the spirituality genre in general would seem more important, because those are the people who can actually take what you're hearing, you know? But the other piece is, I think, like, if it's draining for you, then that's telling you something about maybe how like your show wants to shift. You know, I always know that however I feel in the podcast is how my audience is feeling, right? So if it's a really heavy topic and I can barely get through it, then like they're probably going to be able to barely get through it. And like, I feel that, I mean, if especially you have such long shows, like you have plenty of space to like, maybe there's something in you that wants, like, you have plenty of space to have plenty of areas to like ask lighter questions, you know, like just like going in a totally different direction and asking lighter questions. I mean, I start all of my episodes with like, just like light, kind of silly, but still valuable questions. Like I ask you, like, what's your morning routine, right? Like, what's a product you're really loving right now? Like just really light things, because we're going to have plenty of the episode to go deep. And it's like just getting people warmed up. It's like a little bit lighter, more digestible, you know? So I do that intentionally. And then in an episode, like if I have an opportunity to ask like, you know, a really like light or silly question, I'll do it. And I think like, I mean, you have space if you wanted to have you could have a whole hour of like just screwing around, you know?
Oh, for sure.
But
no, I think that's something that I've been trying to get more into. I mean,
yeah.
we didn't really do it with this one because you've been on the show before. So like, you know, the first time I had you on, we talked about like, what was the first thing you wanted to be when you grew up? You know? And, but I do think there's truth. And again, this goes back to my intention that I had last night going to bed, which was, you know, how can I, if I were always joyful, ... And it's, you know, again, it comes back to like, if I want to create a spiritual podcast that's more joyful, more fun, more interactive, I need to align with that and embody it myself before I'm able to even create that on this physical existence first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's like, I don't know. I always joke around, like there's a lot of spiritual people in San Diego. There's all kinds of them. And there are the groups that are just so serious. Oh my gosh. Everything is so like, so serious. And you don't want the falafel? Is that a past life trauma thing? Like I'm like, really? Right? And then there are other spiritual people who are like, you know, you don't even know, everybody's just like having fun and like laughing, and it's just like actually pure joy, and it's like a totally different frequency. And so it's like there are so many ways you can do anything, you know. But I think that also like I know energy shift and change, right? And there are periods where what people are craving and what we can be craving individually is more information, education, like we want to get in there. And then there are also periods like in the collective energy and in individually where like information overload, you know. And I know I go through these phases personally. Like, I mean, I think most people right now are in information overload. And I know for me, the type of content I consume personally, I don't consume anything heavy. Like my content consumption is I'm watching like, you know, Christmas movie cartoons at this point in my life. I am watching like morning routine videos on YouTube, or I'm on Pinterest looking at clothes and like stupid shit just to like, I don't like to consume information. It's just too much. You know, I just like the fluffy stuff. My whole Pinterest is just people pouring lattes. There's something about that is so satisfying. Like watching people make lattes. I don't know why it just hits a spot for me, you know, like food porn. Like I just love all that stuff where like I watch cat videos on Instagram. Like that is what I consume. I just don't have the space for other stuff. Like, to be honest, you know?
Sure.
And so I think that balance really is important. And I think a lot more people are kind of gravitating for that. I mean, I feel like my best performing content is always like what I think is least valuable.
That's the craziest thing too. I've had that conversation with people as well, where the most powerful information that they have, I've heard even just well-known people talk about it. The most powerful information they have is like in the videos that have the least amount of views possible. And that blows my mind. Like,
I know.
I mean, it makes sense based on what we're saying, right? It makes sense based on if, the vibration's at a certain place that information is going to get buried because people don't give a shit about it. They want to consume the stuff that makes them feel good in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think that's also a shift I need to find within this podcast as well.
I mean, it's such a mind fuck for me. Like, and what I've learned from it is I just don't judge anything. I just like let whatever's coming through, and I just don't judge it, because all of the things I've ever put out where I'm like, that was gold. Like, that is going to, like, people are going to love this. It's like, no one watches it.
Yeah.
Right. And then I'll put something out and you know what's so funny? Sometimes I'll be like, I feel like that was really like dumb. Like, I feel like that was just not helpful. Like, and I'll be like, maybe I'll just take it down, and it's always the ones that I'm like, maybe I'll just take it down because it's a waste of space on the internet. And those are the ones that like get like all the highest numbers. And I'm just like, I don't even know anymore. So I'm just going to not judge it and just let it sit out there.
Just go with it.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like, I mean, and there's probably a life lesson in there somewhere of just not overthinking it, just putting in kind of just doing what feels right.
Just,
like,
and just like trying less. Like just trying less. A lot of us are just trying way too fucking hard. And
it's because we want it. It's because we want it, Christina.
I know, but then we think that we have to try so hard to get it. And that's the problem. And like in trying so hard, we're creating so much resistance, we can't get it. And the thing is, your life, it becomes so much easier when you're just like having fun. Like every day, that's when you're most magnetic. Or like my business, anytime in my business I've tried has been my lowest numbers. And anytime I'm like, I don't give a shit. I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. And if I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it. That is when my business has taken off. Those are always my highest periods of time. I just think people try so hard, and then that is what gets in the way. And the same thing with spirituality. Like, you don't need to do all of these things to be a spiritual person, right? Like, you don't. And people become so regimented every day, and it's like it turns into a to-do list. I'm waking up, I'm chanting, I'm making my elixir, I'm writing my affirmations, then I'm doing my manifestation work in this journal, and then I'm doing that. And it's like the 5-hour morning routine. It's all serious, and it's not even something they want to do. It's just something they think they should do to be spiritual. And when your gifts will open up and your intuition will be loud is when you just throw it all out the window and you're like, I'm just going to have fun.
It's the best vibration to be in too.
It is. So it's trying less. Is the answer.
It seems like that comes up a lot. Just doing a little bit less, not pushing your head against the wall, just kind of taking the foot off the gas a little bit, and just it's weird though, because like, I mean, and maybe it's something with the over masculine energy or something. I mean, myself, it's like if I'm not doing something, it's like nothing's gonna get done. It's like, fuck, dude, like just chill.
But like, why would nothing get done?
Because I'm not doing it. I'm not seeing it being done.
Okay, but like if you're not, why are you assuming that you have to do it for things to happen?
I mean, I know the
why
answer.
Are you not like I'm like the thing is this is when you still think you're in it by yourself. You still think that like you have to manually do it for the thing to get produced versus
I know the
like
answer is programming.
Yeah, well, I don't even care about what the actual answer is. Okay, like it doesn't matter what the actual answer is, right? The point, the question is the point. The question is like, wait, why am I not letting? You know what I do every morning? Whatever I want to create in my business that day, I sit down, I meditate, I send out a telepathic message, I ask my spirit guides, and you know what happens is I will have messages in my inbox of people asking, hey, are you offering this anytime soon? Hey, do you have any more spots? Hey, when are you doing your retreat? Great idea. And then I throw it up and then it gets filled. Simple. Right? So like I don't need to go making it happen. I need to set my intention and allow myself to receive it. Right? But that's because like if I had to be the one to do all of the work to get everything done, there is no way I would be able to do everything I do. No way. Right? So the same way that people will pay for ads and let ads work for them and reach way more people than they could ever do manually, right? Like, let your spirit guides do it. Let your energy do it. I always say my best marketing tool is in the dream space. This is intentional. This is not like some random thing that happens to me. Okay. I do most of my work energetically on my business. It's how I do everything. And most people, because I always, as often as I can, I always am asking people like, how did you find me? Or like, how did you find this offer? Whatever. Cause I just want that data. Most of the time it is someone saying, I had never heard of you and you came to me in a dream and told me I needed to sign up for XYZ.
What?
I'm not joking. I'm so serious right now. And it's a real thing.
By name?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I come in.
And, by name?
Yeah. And then they go, I think so I searched you and I found, yeah, you were running the software. Like people will tell me, yeah, you came to my dream and you said like, I need to sign up for your abundance accelerator program. Or you came in and you said I should join your membership and like you would have the answers in the membership. You know, gosh. This is why witches were burned at the stake back in the 1700s. Because we're too powerful, right?
I guess so. There's something going on there.
But, you know, I mean, I'm just saying, like, I don't have to do it all myself. Like that, like, oh my gosh, you know, and here's the thing. Putting out one more piece, like, what would I be doing, right? Putting out one more piece of content is not going to do anything.
Doesn't really move the needle too much.
Right? So it's like, what's actually moving the needle? And that could be different for everybody.
I'll even elaborate on that, right? Is because I've had plenty of content that's gone viral. And I mean, you know, speaking monetarily, speaking podcast numbers, like those are the two things that like, you know, I really care about. Podcast numbers have gone up, but like monetarily, not too much has changed. Like a couple things here, a couple things there. And so it really kind of comes back to what you're saying is like, there's this almost false perception, this false reality perception of, you know, if you have all these numbers, then you're going to have all this money, or if you have all these numbers, it's going to fix all these other different things. And yeah, I like what you're saying here. I'm picking it up.
Here's the thing. I mean, I could go off on this forever. Like when I was doing business coaching, you know, people would always ask, like, how do I grow my following? How do I grow? And I'm like, do you want bigger numbers or do you want to make money? Because what I will suggest for growing your audience will be different than what I'm suggesting if you want to make money. Two different things. Okay?
For sure.
Like you don't need big numbers to make a lot of money. You don't at all. Most of the people, like the people I know who make the most money, don't have huge numbers. And I have worked behind the scenes of, I mean, I have always had way smaller numbers than a lot of people around me. And I make like literally like 100x a lot of those people, right? But I've also worked behind the scenes with a lot of people who have huge followings, right? Huge podcasts, huge Instagram, huge YouTube. And like, those are the people who would come to me for coaching and they're not making any money because it's two different things. It's two different things, you know? So then it's like, well, what is it that you want? It doesn't like whichever one you want is fine. It doesn't matter, but like, it's a different energy to hold. It's different work to do. It's different thoughts to have. It's different priorities. If you're looking to increase, you know, like financially versus numbers, different things.
I can for sure attest to that because I know that my intentions were set around. It's weird because like subconsciously it was like, oh, I want money, you know, but then I was like almost not putting those as my intentions. My intentions was the following. It was the views. It was the generating an audience. And it's like, but I was like, but where's the money? It's like, but you didn't ask for the money. You asked for the followers, not the money.
100%. Like different things, powerful. You know? And like, I know for me, I'll go through phases of like, I'm putting out a lot of stuff. Like I'm all over social media, whatever. And then I go through phases where like, no one knows where I am. I'm gone. Because I have a different intention in that season. And there are seasons where I'm interacting or I'm talking to people where I'm, you know, just like putting my energy out, I'm growing like that. There are periods where we're growing numbers. And then there are different periods where we're making money. Like that's the main focus. Like obviously money's always coming in, but like in those periods are usually when I'm MIA because I'm doing the stuff, you know, that I need to do because I'm focusing on attracting in money.
Right.
So it's a different thing.
Well, then help me out here with this, because in my mentality, maybe I'm wrong here, money is more of a masculine energy and doing is in masculine energy. So is there not a correlation between needing to do to make money? I mean, because I'm on board. I want to dive into what you're saying of, people will just come to me asking, but where's like the disconnect that I'm seeing here with like masculine energy, doing, and money?
Well, with everything, like, okay, yeah, money is a supportive energy. It's masculine energy. But like for us to attract in anything, there's a balance of masculine and feminine energy. So there's a balance of aligned action, right? Taking aligned action, being clear with goals, like putting things out, setting up containers for us to receive money. And then there's also the balance of the feminine energy of actually receiving it, right? Being able to receive it. So when I'm saying like I'm doing the things I need to do, to make money because I already have structure set up. A lot of times what I need to do is I need to meditate, or I need to get a lot of massages and my nails done. Like I need to take time off. I need to have a vacation. And that's what I need to do to make money. So like when money is coming in, it's because I'm in receiving mode. So when I'm in receiving mode, I'm often like offline, like doing my thing, like just chilling, living my life, having fun, relaxing, resting, whatever. And that is when the money actually has the space to come in because I'm in receiving. With money specifically, a lot of people are so in masculine energy. They're doing, and they're never shifting into the energy of receiving. So the money never comes in, which is why a lot of times when people go on vacation, that's when they manifest a lot of money because they finally have put themselves in a vibrational space to actually receive, So there's a balance of both of those. And there's also the understanding of it's not just doing, but it's whatever I am doing, it like whatever the action is it actually in alignment of like with me getting the thing I want, And so a lot of times the people's action, what they're putting out isn't even in alignment with the actual result they want. Like what we were just saying of like maybe the action is they're doing all these things and they're growing in their numbers in terms of their audience. They have a lot of followers or whatever, but that action isn't necessarily in alignment with you receiving money. Right.
Okay.
So it's like whatever my intention is, I need to be clear that the action is in alignment with that thing, not something else. Right. So like, it's like, I have to have the masculine structure. I'm going to take aligned action and have containers for the money to come into, but then I have to also be in my feminine so that I can actually receive my manifestation.
Gotcha. It's a really interesting way to look at it. Yeah, because sitting in the feminine isn't something that I'm very commonly comfortable with. And so it's an interesting reflection of like this parallel between the catch-22. So is it almost just stepping away from the business, stepping away from it to let whatever the groundwork you've laid out to just like do its thing?
Yeah, totally. So it's like, I mean, let's say I'm launching something, right? I always tell people it's like, okay, so you have the period before is when you're in your masculine energy. Like, let's say I'm launching something, and I'm setting everything up. So I'm getting everything ready. Let's say I'm writing marketing emails. I'm writing a couple posts. I'm creating some graphics I'm going to share on my stories, whatever it is. I'm, recording something in my podcast. I'm basically putting the offer out there, right? So I'm getting all of that set up. And then, did I lose you?
Yeah, oh, there you are. Okay. Yeah, I lost you for a second. Gotta love it.
So I'm setting things up. I'm setting up, I'm going to do a marketing email, podcast, Instagram post, graphics. Like I'm in my doing phase, but then the week and I'm doing that all ahead of time, but then the week I'm actually launching, when it's all going out, that's already been scheduled. I'm not doing, that is the week I schedule self-care every single day. I'm resting, I'm sleeping a lot, I'm taking baths, I'm doing nature walks, I'm chilling, I'm meditating, I'm watching funny movies. Launch week, I'm always in receiving so that the money can come in, right? So I'm balancing those out equally. And what people do is they're launching something and they're like going within it. And they basically just shut the door to actually receiving much. So it's a whole lot harder for them to actually bring the money in.
Gotcha. It's being able to figure out that balance of feminine energy with it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but you have But you have processes though, or you have items like your community that you leave open all the time, right? Like the accelerator.
Mm-hmm.
I think I signed up for that a while ago, but I don't know that I completed it. So I got to get back on that. Check
You
out
should
that
complete it.
activation accelerator, the 30-day.
Yeah.
Is it still available there, or do I need to like re-sign up to get the emails?
No, it should all be there.
Okay.
Depending on when you signed up, we moved it into like the Ascension Actor, we moved into a portal, so it might have just been moved. But
Okay.
that's totally free. So anybody listening, like you can sign up. So it might be just in the portal now, but you have access
Okay.
to it. Yeah.
I'll get back to that. But even as an example, right? Like that's already set up and in place.
Mm-hmm.
So then how do you cultivate receiving energy around this thing that you've already created and put out there?
Well, I'm just always in receiving around it. You know what I mean? So it's like that's what I'm saying is like anything I'm creating or I'm putting out or I'm setting up the structure for it. So like living things, passive income, so to speak, it's already out there. That's been the masculine part. And then the rest of the time, like I'm just kind of in receiving around it. So like I might put something up reminding people it's there, and then I'm resting after. But to me, it's a day of it's a way of life. Like to me, I don't, if I'm launching something, it's a very like, okay, this period I'm going and I'm doing, in this period I'm resting and receiving. But my lifestyle is about receiving because I am naturally somebody who could be going, doing all the time. So I live my life with an intention to almost be out of balance and have so much receiving, because for me to feel like all I'm doing is receiving is actually when I'm in balance, because I'm so naturally like going, doing. So
Whoa.
any space I have, my priority is receiving and resting, and it's, you really got to think about that. Like if we think about optimal energy balance and optimal flow, vibrationally, is equilibrium. Masculine and feminine energy like are in equal balance. Most people are like 98% masculine energy. Or when they think they're in feminine energy, they're still in their masculine because they're doing self-care. They're giving to themselves. Versus actually receiving from someone else, so I just make it a priority of like, I want to receive as much as possible, and like what feels like receiving for me, so like letting people, it could be anything from letting people give me compliments, letting somebody buy something for me, whenever somebody's, I'll pay for it, I'm like, okay. Right. Okay. It can be letting somebody listen to me while I vent. Just be like, can you hold space for me? It is like for me, allowing other people to serve me. So working with other practitioners and people who are taking care of me, having my own mentors who I'm receiving from, for me, like, I mean, I get a massage every week. I get lymphatic drainage every week. I do a lot of self-care. I get craniosacral therapy weekly. I do acupuncture every week. Like I have things set up so I'm consistently in receiving, not giving to myself, because then I'm still in giving energy. I'm having somebody else give to me, and so I think if people really thought about that, like, what's my balance? Even like what's normal? Normal is I work 5 days a week. I'm just like, and then it's a 2-day weekend, but then people don't even really rest on their weekend. Right? They're still like doing stuff. They're taking care of the other stuff they didn't have to during the week. So what happens is we're just always doing, when really it would be, what if my week was half doing and half resting? That would blow people's lives up.
Yeah, that gives me a lot of anxiety just thinking about that.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Like for most people, for
sure. Yeah.
Right? But I think that's the reality check we need.
We come from this such a doing energy. Have you ever like done any thought or talked to this guides about like what cultivated this doing energy? I mean, maybe it ties into what we were talking about earlier with the history of how barbaric it was and how chaotic it was. Mm-hmm. But have you done like any thought or talked to spirit guides about why it is that we are so much in our masculine energy as opposed to maybe even the opposite of all of society being in its feminine energy?
Yeah, I mean, a few things. One is fear, but the main thing is it's programming designed to keep us in the system so that the people who are in power stay in power. If everybody had that balance, if people were like, think about it just tangibly. People pay for convenience. Why? Because we're tired and we don't have time, right? Time is the resource we can't get back. So people will pay for anything that will give them more time, right? I will pay for somebody to deliver to my house. I will pay for Amazon. I will pay like whatever can save me time. What choices do people make when they are stressed, when they are tired, and when they don't have enough time, right? That just promotes more consumerism of like, I'm going to pay for all of these things. It also keeps people vulnerable. If people had a lot of the time and space, like they had more space, they were more well rested, their intuition came on, they had more time to learn new ideas, and they had more time to take care of themselves, they would be stepping into their power, they would be getting more information within themselves, and they would be connecting with other energies, they would be accessing more of their gifts, their bodies would be healing themselves, like they would be able to be their own healers, problems would go away, and then who would get paid? And then also, how many people would realize the problems with the people who are in power, and they wouldn't stay in power anymore. Right? So it's like, it's a weakness play, essentially. It keeps people busy.
Right. I got to sit with that. It's pretty dope. I need to actually sit with that and not try to impose my masculine energy on it to figure it out.
You know, I had this really like life-altering experience once, many times, but specifically around this, where I was, you know, not even in the astral, beyond the astral. I was like in the monarch being's energy, okay, which is beyond any like reality, okay, and I was looking down, watching this earth thing, and watching the humans. And at this point, I'm like in this other consciousness, and I just start laughing, and I'm laughing so hard because I'm watching from this other lens, and I'm like, and again, this is like this other version of me, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, these humans, they're so stressed about this money. Like they're spending their whole lives like stressing out and trying to figure out money. And it was like honestly laughable because I'm like watching these dynamics and people are like, yeah, I need money. And I'm like, I'm like crying laughing because I'm watching this and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're so serious. And they're doing all of these things when they could be doing like, you know, way, way less, like barely anything. And the money would still come in and they're trying so hard. And I was like, laughing at it because it was so, almost comical. It was like watching a comedy movie where, you know, somebody's trying so hard, like, and they just keep fucking up, or it's just like they're making it worse because they're trying so hard, and you're just like, oh my god, stop, you know. But it's funny when you're watching a comedy movie.
I'm getting the image of like Home Alone when they're trying to capture the kid.
Yes, exactly, exactly. It's just like that, and that's what I was looking at, and I was like, do they even realize it's not even real? Like, we're spending our whole lives trying so hard to like make money, right? So we can survive. And it's like, money isn't even real. It's not. Like, there are numbers on a screen. Like, it's paper that somebody said meant something. There's not even enough paper that represents what we're saying there is. Like, it's literally a made up fucking thing.
It sounds like you're saying buy Bitcoin.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying it was like just a really interesting perspective, like where it was much more ingrained for me because it was like, because I was like kind of oriented from a different dimension, like looking down on it and even like looking down at myself and things that like I've done in the past. And I was like, what was I doing? Like I was trying so hard, you know? And that's how I feel just the more I've gotten into manifestation and energy work and just seeing how things can happen so quickly and easily. And I just think about, oh my gosh, I can't believe how long I spent like thinking it had to be so hard. You know, it's like, well, people are working, they're running on the treadmill for an hour. And I'm like, you know, lift a weight for 10 minutes. Like, well, why would you not do it? There's an easier way, you know? So I think that some of that is we just don't know. Some of it is that we're in fear. Some of it is it keeps us busy. And sometimes that's for someone else's benefit. Sometimes that's for our benefit. Sometimes we like staying in that busy cycle, in that rat race, because we don't know what we would do with the silence. We don't want to face our real feelings. We don't want to face that we feel alone. We want to believe that it's all for a bigger purpose. It all has to be for something. Like sometimes that is for our benefit. And we actually like staying busy because it makes us feel productive. And it's not necessarily being productive at all. But, you know, if you don't want the extra space, then you can keep yourself busy. So it's just different ways of doing it. But I think, like, you know, if you want there to be an easier way, there probably is. And if you have that desire, that's your intuition trying to get you to find it.
I love it. It definitely rings true to me. What speaking on like receiving, and maybe specifically with receiving money, is there a deity or an energy that you would recommend working with or channeling in order to more feel and invite in more of that receiving energy into someone's life? Mine specifically?
Yeah, actually, I did this episode a while back, where
What number is it? Do you know?
I could look it up right now.
Plug it.
I did an episode where I channeled my money witch.
Oh. What did I tell you what witch is?
So this energy came through. Where is it? I can't find it. I'll have to find it later. But there's an episode where this was like a couple years ago, and I was just meditating, talking to my guides, and this woman comes through, and she's like dressed in money, like just has money all around her, coins. And I was like, "Who are you?" She's like, "Oh, I'm your money witch." And I was like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah, like I'll help you out with money." And she's like super sassy. And I was channeling all this stuff from her, and it was super helpful. And she's like, "Yeah, everybody has a money witch." And I was like, "Oh, really?" And she's like, "Yeah, and she's like, just tell them, like, call forward their money witch, and like their money witch will come forward." So I would say, call forward your money witch. If that resonates with you, or you could do something like, here's the thing, whoever's going to help you with money might be unique for you. But that's like something you could say, like someone will come through. If you're like, you could just say, "Can my spirit guide come forward who helps me with, you know, money?" You could say that. I have a couple other spirit guides who specifically help me with different things related to abundance, just different guides for me. And then one of the other goddesses that I like to work with around abundance is, people pronounce her name differently, but she says to me, Abundantia, Abundantia. She's like lesser known, but she's all about abundance. So that's a goddess who is all about abundance and money. So those are some of the energies that I like to tune into.
Super dope. You'll have to go look for that money witch episode that you had.
Yeah.
Pretty funny.
I know. I don't know why it's not. I'll have to find it. I'll send it to you.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I'll throw all your links down there. Feels like a pretty good spot to wrap up.
Yeah.
So what are you feeling? Do you want to keep going? You got other stuff to share? Or
no, I feel good.
Feel good?
If you feel complete, I feel complete. You know.
Cool. We're done with like the little tactical surgery on the podcast episode.
Yeah, we're done with it. Feels complete. So
love it.
There's that moment where, like, you can just tell, like, cup is full, you know. And what I'll say is, I think that this is a big space as well for us to, once again, be more efficient. Like, I'll say this comes up in coaching. Like, let's say somebody books in an hour call, but we can get done. If we get done what we need to get done within 20 minutes, like, and it's complete, then why are we staying on the call the rest of the time? You know, and I think for me, that's another way I've just expanded time. This is also related to abundance and things of, I used to always schedule meetings and stuff of like, oh, we're going to have an hour meeting. But I realized if I put on the calendar, there's an hour meeting, then it would just take an hour, you know, or just being okay with having a call and then everybody being on the same page of like, if we're done early, like, cool, it's done. And so maybe that only took 10 minutes. We don't need to just keep filling the space for another 20 to finish the time. So I've been playing a lot more with like just that in general of not already deciding something's going to take me an hour, because I feel like that's a common block of time. It's like, oh yeah, I'll do this for an hour. This call will be an hour or 30, whatever. I've just like, that has been really helpful for me of just not removing that and picking a shorter time and letting it take up that much time, or like just being on the same page with that person of, well, if we complete early, then we can just hop off early. And then we both know, like, if we're done and we finished, or if it's in a setting where somebody's receiving information of like, if the cup is full, then we're just going to be done. Like sometimes I'm doing calls and stuff and I can just feel the energy, and like maybe we still have another 20 minutes like on the clock, so to speak, but everybody, I can feel it's like, we're done for today. Like
Everyone's
if I give
checked out.
if I say one more piece of information, like it's just too much. Like it's not even anything else I say, you're not going to hear, right? You're done. It was too much to process. So at that point, it's like, okay, let's just close it up, right? So I think that is very related to abundance to me, and a nice little time saving hack. It's all about efficiency, I think.
I love it. Well, that's good for our masculine energy, so we can get back into our feminine energy to, receive and all that. Christina, always a pleasure. I always give this time for the guest if you want to encourage anything. I mean, you've been a fountain of knowledge already, but if there's anything else you'd like to encourage or persuade the audience, obviously. Oh my gosh.
One more time.
All right, we're back for the very last part of it where Christina's going to tell us anything she wants to plug or encourage. Christina, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I would highly encourage, checking out my new book if it calls to you at all, Pain, Love, and Purpose. It is a channeled poetry book. It's an easy read. It's a great coffee table book. I feel like it's a great gift. I feel like it would resonate with everybody, honestly. So check out my new book. And Manifestation Mastery, of course, if you haven't already. And I would definitely encourage what we brought up, the 5D Ascension Activator. It's a totally free course. It's super powerful. It's 30 channeled lessons. And there's also the option to also include like my breakdown of each of those channeled messages as well, just to get more out of it. And then there are associated like journal prompts and action items to do. So you're really living that out and not just listening and moving on and not really anchoring in that shift. So I would recommend doing that if you haven't already. It's really powerful. It is a great thing to, I was actually thinking about this yesterday because when I first recorded that, it was something I did. It was like January, like it was leading into January, and the guide said, okay, we're starting off the new year with this Ascension Activator and you're going to record for the next 30 days, one a day. And I just think it's such a great thing to do. Like, whenever you need a reset or early in the year is great as well. So a fresh 2023, mindset shift, energy shift. So I'd recommend that. And if you just go to my website, ChristinaTheChannel.com, there are all kinds of links to it.
Well, so it is Christina the Channel.
Yeah.
I thought you said you didn't have it anywhere.
No, I don't have Christina the Channel Rice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, gotcha. Everything's Christina the Channel, but I think it's so cute how you say Christina the Channel Rice. Like the channel is my middle name. That's what I love.
Okay.
People usually either say they'll say Christina Rice or they say Christina the Channel. But gotcha. I like how you mush them. I love it. I think it's so funny. But yeah, and we'll put the link in the show notes. Clayton will. Not me.
All right, if I have to. No, guys, but seriously, you should seriously check out this book, Pain, Love, and Purpose, because it's pretty dope. It'll make you feel some type of way. And Christina, thank you so much. Such dope information, as always. Guys, please like, share, subscribe, but do the share. If there's someone you know that this vibes with and you're like, holy shit, Christina hit something here, which I know she did, but whenever you know she did, that's when you should share it. And appreciate you all. Thank you for sticking with us with the 4 different high vibe interruptions, whatever you want to call them. But with all of that being said, appreciate you guys, and I will see you all in the 6th dimension.